Chapter 2787. The giant phantom worm wriggled slowly. Although each movement seemed slow, it caused the space around it to change and destroy all the restrictions. The ground rippled, and the spatial lock was broken. Damn it! Shang Jin bombarded the body of the giant phantom worm again and again. Although his offensive power was lacking, that was only in comparison to the other two master gods and his defense. No matter how weak Shang Jin's offensive power was, he had surpassed the peak Yuan Venerate and reached the threshold of an almighty. Although his repeated attacks couldn't kill the giant phantom worm, they made its defense weaker and weaker. Die! Shang Jin God's power erupted, and the golden fish shadow finally shattered the giant gloom worm. Streams of mist condensed, and the surrounding space seemed to have fallen into a spatial maze. At this time, Shang Jin God's expression was extremely ugly. He realized that he had made a complete miscalculation. Lin Feng wasn't in the body of the giant phantom worm. Even though the space was shrouded in fog, Lin Feng's aura had completely disappeared. During the time when he was attacking the nether mirage worm, he had completely disappeared. Oh! Shang Jin's face twisted with rage as he roared. A dignified Ian god had actually been played around with in the palms of a human emperor. If he wanted to fight, he could fight, and if he wanted to leave, he could leave. Even now, he didn't know where Lin Feng had gone. However, he sensed that Lin Feng was no longer in the entire great samsara realm. Creating a diversion, Lin Feng took advantage of his lack of attack power and successfully retreated. Damn it! Shang Jin's eyes widened in anger. He had been hesitating for a long time, waiting for a long time, but in the end, Lin Feng still managed to escape. It was as if he had been ruthlessly slapped in the face, leaving behind a striking imprint of 5 fingers. It seemed like he had won this battle, but he had actually lost miserably. He didn't even know where Lin Feng had gone. Had he escaped from the Billion Wheel Origin Realm, escaped from the Rinnegan Eye, or entered the Golden Eye Samsara? Kan Wu! Shang Jin roared hysterically. Inform Eternity immediately to send reinforcements. Quick, send reinforcements. Search every inch of the Million Wheel Origin Realm. We can't let Lin Feng escape. Yes, my lord, Grand Eternity God Kan Wu replied. Whoosh! The eternal god Shang Jin's face was ashen as he sped towards Golden Eye reincarnation. At present, he had no other choice. Losing face was a small matter, but letting Lin Feng escape was a big matter. Especially since he had just fought with Lin Feng, he clearly knew how terrifying this little guy Huang Zun was. Once he had the chance to escape, then what awaited Universe 7's Godly Inquisition would be a catastrophe. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to keep Lin Feng in the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm. Chua! Shang Jin instantly entered the Golden Eye Samsara. At this moment, he was incomparably calm. In Shang Jin's opinion, although Lin Feng had used a special treasure to escape, the possibility of him leaving the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm was very small. This treasure was at least at the level of a supreme chaos treasure, and it was extremely rare. There was a 99% chance that Lin Feng had either entered the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm through Golden Eye reincarnation, or escaped through the Rinnegan and attempted to leave the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm through the Silver Eye. The former was to enter the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm and slowly search for Lin Feng. The latter was to inform Eternity God Kan Wu that there was no way Lin Feng could escape once he entered the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm. Regardless of which possibility it was, he wouldn't give Lin Feng another chance. This Huang Zun brat was too dangerous. Once he was given enough time, the consequences would be unimaginable. He would never repeat the humiliation he had suffered in the Yellow Springs Origin Realm. You can't escape Lin Feng. Shang Jin's roar echoed throughout the 100 Million Wheels Origin Realm. At the moment, Lin Feng was in the Golden Eye reincarnation. It was very similar to the Silver Eye reincarnation. Reincarnation after reincarnation was a test of life and death. If a cultivator's willpower wasn't strong enough or pure enough, they would easily be trapped and their soul would be imprisoned forever. The Golden Eye reincarnation was the final hurdle to enter the 100 million wheels origin realm. At the same time, it was also a benchmark for countless Yuan Venerate cultivators to test their willpower. Being able to pass the Golden Eye reincarnation meant that one's willpower had already reached the threshold of an almighty. Therefore, cultivators who could enter the 100 million wheels origin realm weren't ordinary. It's worth exchanging a chance to fight Eternity God, Shengjin, for a nether flame. Lin Feng's state of mind wasn't affected at all as he went through the many reincarnations. He could even divert his attention to do other things. The Golden Eye reincarnation, which could be passed at the threshold of an almighty, was just an ordinary obstacle for Lin Feng. Lin Feng had already thought of a countermeasure before the battle with Eternity God Shengjin. He would fight with all his might. It would be great if he could severely injure or even kill Eternity God Shengjin. If he couldn't, he could at least ensure his own safety. This battle had indeed not met his expectations, but Lin Feng hadn't come out empty-handed. At the very least, he had clearly understood how strong Eternity God Shengjin was. How far was he from Eternity God Shengjin? 2 points. One is that my internal universe has to become stronger. The other is that I have to find a primal chaos ultimate treasure that can impact my origin spirit. Neither of these were easy. However, this was the only feasible method he could think of at the moment. Eternity God Shengjin was really formidable. This was only in the Hongmeng Sea. If he had been in the origin universe and had been bestowed with the Sky Path, his strength would have been at least several times stronger than it was now. Whoosh, whoosh. Reincarnation after reincarnation cycle passed by. Regardless of whether it was an illusion or a direct mental influence, nothing could obstruct Lin Feng at all. It was as if he was riding the wind and breaking the waves in the boundless sea. Rays of golden light flashed past his eyes, and his surroundings changed instantly. Oh! Suddenly, Lin Feng felt his heartbeat. A familiar call was heard once again. It was right in front of him in this reincarnation cycle. Pa! Reaching out his hand, Lin Feng's grab seemed to have penetrated all the reincarnations. Layers of golden light wrapped around it. It was a beautiful golden bead that emitted pure energy. It was perfectly integrated with the surrounding environment, as if it had been nurtured in this Golden Eye reincarnation cycle. Hongmeng fruit? Lin Feng was slightly surprised. He hadn't seen anything like it in the Silver Eye reincarnation. Why did it suddenly appear in the Golden Eye reincarnation this time? It seems to be related to the heart force. Lin Feng was also bold. He directly swallowed it. In an instant, surging energy gathered. The city of Will vibrated loudly. The Hongmeng aura flowed and wrapped around the golden bead. In an instant, it merged with the heart force. Whoosh! The heart force in his body seemed to have changed form. Its energy surged and instantly rose. The vigorous energy attacked the heart force. Lin Feng felt the changes in the heart force and vaguely saw the appearance of the heart force heavenly path. It seemed to be within reach. A pleasant surprise. A golden light appeared in front of him. It was the exit of the reincarnation cycle. It was the way out of the Golden Eye reincarnation. Feeling the call getting stronger and stronger, Lin Feng stepped out of the golden light without hesitation. His figure slowly disappeared into the reincarnation cycle. Chapter 2788. As expected, I've entered an independent space. When Lin Feng had escaped through the hidden skeleton, he had considered whether to leave through the Rinnegan or enter the Golden Eye. One was to retreat, and the other was to advance. If he retreated, he might not necessarily be faster than Shengjin. Moreover, there were many prime gods in the adjudicator of Universe 7. Shengjin could have the other prime gods wait at the entrance. It was easy to enter the million-wheel origin realm, but difficult to leave. Rather than passively hiding in the great reincarnation realm, he might as well take the risk and enter the Golden Eye. Firstly, there was a call from the depths of the million-wheel origin realm. Secondly, with the precedents set by the Silver Eye realm, it was very likely that the Golden Eye realm was within the Golden Eye realm. As expected, what an astonishing amount of perfect origin core force. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly, and his lips curled into a smile. It wasn't because of the abundant, perfect origin core force here, but because he could clearly sense the existence of perfect origin core force. At this moment, the heavenly Tao of heart force in his internal universe was quietly transforming. His own origin core force had transformed into perfect origin core force after consuming that golden Hongmeng fruit. Is it mine alone, or is it the reward of the Goldeneye realm? Lin Feng wasn't sure, but the result was undoubtedly good. In truth, Lin Feng was an exception. As long as one fulfilled 3 conditions, any heart force cultivator who entered the Goldeneye realm would be able to obtain the sacred heart fruit. First, they had to pass the Goldeneye realm perfectly. Second, they had to attempt the Goldeneye realm for the first time. Third, they had to be a heart force cultivator. The third condition wasn't too harsh. As long as a heart force cultivators will reach the level of a major power, they would be able to obtain the sacred heart fruit. However, 99% of heart force cultivators who met the requirements already had perfect origin core force. The sacred heart fruit was just the icing on the cake. But to Lin Feng, it was a timely help. Advancing to the next level was a piece of cake. Lin Feng's internal universe was already enough to accommodate perfect origin core force. In addition, Lin Feng's will was extremely strong, and he was already prepared for everything. As his perfect origin core force transformed, the Qin Emperor's origin heart began to stir, as though some seal was about to be broken. I can control it. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. The advancement of his perfect origin heart force allowed him to finally drive the Will City of Emperor Qin's origin heart. This vast and majestic heaven city had a tyrannical power that could suppress everything, and it seemed to be sealing something. Hua! Qin Diyuan's heart seemed to have cracked. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. As the city of Will soared into the sky, countless pieces of information appeared in his mind, including the way to control the city of Will, the way to use the 9 Hells' baleful aura, and even the information about the Qin the Archarmor. The city of Will has 2 forms, trap and smash. The 9 Hells' baleful Qi has 2 abilities, pierce and seep. 4 abilities for methods. Heart force cultivators usually developed in a balanced manner. They use their heart force to strengthen their close combat abilities or the power of their primordial spirits. The 4 abilities of the Qin Emperor's heart force could all be combined with their primordial spirits. The trap of the City of Will was used to suppress and control. It could be combined with illusions or origin soul attacks. The smash of the City of Will was used to attack one's primordial spirit. It could be combined with controlling attacks or origin sea attacks. The 9 Hells' fiendish Qi's pierce was a piercing ability. It focused origin energy on a single point and could be used in conjunction with a control-type attack or origin soul attack. The seep of the 9 Hells' baleful Qi was used to permeate and spread influence. It could be combined with illusions or origin sea attacks. So to unlock the seal of the Qin Emperor's origin heart, one needs to reach perfect origin heart force. Lin Feng finally understood. No wonder he could sense the uniqueness of the Qin Emperor's origin heart, but couldn't control its abilities. Its requirements weren't high. However, in the origin universe where the heart force heavenly Tao didn't exist, unlocking it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Instead, it was him who had accidentally activated it. And this was only a part of the Qin Emperor's origin heart's power. It's really as Senior Yellow Spring said. There's an ancient inheritance hidden in the Qin Emperor's heart. Lin Feng could vaguely sense it before, but now he could see it clearly. There was a door to the heart at the center of the 5 stars in his body. The information in his mind clearly stated that as long as he gathered all 5 parts of the Qin Emperor armor set, he could open the door to the heart and obtain the Qin Emperor's inheritance. 5 parts. The Qin Emperor's origin heart is the source, and the other 4 parts are supplementary. Lin Feng could vaguely sense the location of the other 4 parts. Even if he was in the 100 million Lin origin worlds, he could still sense their location. Every part, in addition to its own abilities, can unlock special abilities when combined with the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart. Hongming Origin Objects. The Qin Emperor armor set was a true Hongming origin object. All 5 parts were at the level of supreme chaos treasures. The Qin Emperor's Origin Heart, in particular, was at the top of the supreme chaos treasures. However, the other 5 parts weren't bad either. Their abilities were at the level of supreme chaos treasures. Moreover, as long as they were combined with the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart, their special abilities would reach the level of Hongmeng origin objects. And if he gathered all 5 parts of the Qin Emperor armor set, not only would he obtain the ancient inheritance, but he would also obtain the strongest power of the Qin Emperor armor set. Amazing. Too amazing. Lin Feng sighed. Although Senior Yellow Spring had obtained the Qin Emperor armor set back then, he could only use the basic abilities of the other 4 parts. He couldn't unleash the true power of the Qin Emperor armor set because he didn't have the perfect Origin Heart force and couldn't control the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart. Therefore, Senior Yellow Spring had left behind a message that the ancient inheritance was hidden in the Qin Emperor armor set. What a pity. If Senior Yellow Spring had fully mastered the Qin Emperor armor set back then, he might not have died at the hands of Universe 7's godly inquisition. Lin Feng sighed. Fate was making fools of people. Senior Yellow Spring had clearly mastered the power and had the ability to save his life, but he lacked luck. But now he had obtained this luck. Although it's not a chaos cardinal treasure that can attack the Origin Soul, the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart will only be stronger, much stronger. Lin Feng carefully savored all the information about the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart. This was a treasure with many functions. Most treasures had a special characteristic. The more abilities they had, the more useful they would be, and the weaker their individual power would be. But the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was different. Not only did it have many functions, but each of them was top-notch. He didn't need to master too many. As long as he could master this smash of the City of Will or this seep of the 9 Hells' baleful aura, combined with the attack of the Origin Sea, he would be able to unleash extraordinary effects. Including close combat, the City of Will and the 9 Hells' baleful aura could perfectly complement it. Heart Force cultivators used the heart as the source, combining the physical body's origin strength and soul origin strength into a perfect body. Wait for me, Shengjin God of Eternity. The next time we meet, let's compete again. Lin Feng was full of confidence. Chapter 2789. In the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe. Father, Tai Yufu looked around in shock and spread his arms in disbelief. It was as if he was dreaming, yet the dream felt so real that it felt as if he was experiencing it himself. That feeling of death, which he had never felt before, was especially profound. Why aren't you thanking my lord? King Tai Di said expressionlessly. However, his heart was bleeding. The price of reviving a Yuan Venerate was extremely expensive. Even though he was the commander of 13 Corps and an extraordinary almighty, the huge expenditure had caused the wealth he had accumulated over countless eras to go up in smoke. However, at the very least, he had revived Tai Yufu. Wealth could be accumulated again, but there was only one son. My lord? Tai Yufu was stunned. His memories were being reorganized. He had returned to the moment when he had been killed by Lin Feng in the 100 million wheel origin realms. He was instantly enlightened and woke up. He had died. However, he had been revived. Tai Yufu, thank you for reviving me, my lord. Tai Yufu knelt on the ground, not daring to breathe too loudly. Someone that his father, King Tai Di, addressed as my lord, was naturally a Taichu Yuan general. He was a supreme being at the level of a universe ruler. Only such an existence had the heaven-defying ability to revive him. Tai Yufu is very grateful for your kindness, my lord. King Tai Di bowed respectfully. The majestic figure on the throne was as tall as the sky. His furry hands were placed on the strange beast on the platform. His voice was as loud as a bell. Tai Yaofu, the one who killed you, is an emperor of the child universe. Yes, my lord. Although Tai Yufu was embarrassed to say it, he didn't dare hide it. Huang Zun from the sub-universe? King Taidi's eyes widened in disbelief. He knew Tai Yufu's strength very well. Although Tai Yufu wasn't considered the best among cultivators of the same level in the Taichu origin chaotic universe, Tai Yufu's strength was considered decent under his guidance. It would be pardonable if Tai Yufu had been killed by another Yuan Venerate powerhouse. However, Tai Yufu had been killed by Huang Zun. Moreover, it was Huang Zun from the sub-universe. How is this possible? King Taidi's lips trembled slightly, and his brows furrowed deeply. Although it was inconceivable, he knew that the Prime General wouldn't lie. After all, the Prime General would obtain a portion of Taidi's memories before his death when he resurrected Taidi. Most importantly, Tyler admitted it himself. "Go get him, Tai." His voice carried a hint of indisputable authority. The transcendent being on the throne had an imposing aura, and his voice echoed in the huge palace. "Yes, my lord." King Taidi bowed. Within the Origin Realm, Lin Feng was currently cultivating. Following the transformation of the perfect Source Heart Force, his body automatically absorbed the perfect Source Heart Force of the GoldenEye world to strengthen himself. Lin Feng did not purposely absorb the perfect Source Heart Force of the GoldenEye world. Once the perfect Source Heart Force of the GoldenEye world was completely absorbed, it would disappear. Silver Eye's world was like this. There was only one chance. Time is limited. I have to master the power of the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart before the perfect Origin Heart energy in the GoldenEye world is exhausted. Lin Feng was also helpless. Others could not wait to absorb the perfect Source Heart energy faster and improve their cultivation faster. Now, he was the one who wanted to absorb it slower. Another contradiction was that the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was a heart energy treasure, and the source of its energy was the perfect Source Heart Force. In other words, whether it was the smash of the City of Will or the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi, he had to master the use of the perfect Source Heart Force. Using the perfect Source Heart Force would inevitably consume it. If he consumed it, he would absorb the perfect Source Heart Force of the GoldenEye world to replenish it, which would naturally accelerate the disappearance of the GoldenEye world. But there was no other way. The GoldenEye world was a cultivation world for the perfect Source Heart Force. This was the purpose of its existence. There was no need to be too deliberate. He would do what he needed to do. Increasing his combat strength to the greatest extent within a limited time was what Lin Feng was best at. He had experienced this too many times. Two things at the same time. Lin Feng refined the illusion-type peak chaos treasure while cultivating to master the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart. Mind cultivators were very strong, and they were proficient in both close combat and long-range attacks. However, they had a weakness. They could not exist independently. In order to unleash their strength, they had to combine physical attacks or Origin Soul Control. Although there was also willpower impact, the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart did not have this ability now. The smash of the City of Will and the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi can both be used in conjunction with the Origin C impact. The former strengthens the power of the Origin C impact, while the latter increases the versatility of the Origin C impact. There is no difference between the two. Lin Feng was very clear about the difference between the two. In addition to the characteristics of their abilities, the smash of the City of Will and the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi had different uses when dealing with different soul defense treasures. For example, if the enemy's soul defense treasures focused on toughness and had a perfect defense, the smash of the City of Will would be the most effective. If the enemy's soul defense treasures were tough and had many defensive characteristics and support, the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi would be the most effective. If he had enough time, he would naturally master both abilities and use different combinations for different opponents. However, time was limited. Whether it was the smash of the City of Will or the seep of the Nine Hells' baleful Qi, their power had reached the level of a supreme chaos treasure. Lin Feng was not confident that he could cultivate either to phenomenal success, let alone perfect it. When it came to a choice, he had to choose. My main opponent is still eternal God, Shengjin. His soul defense, true treasure. Lin Feng had fought eternal god Sheng Jin before, so he was very familiar with his soul, defense, true treasure. Pure defense. Then I'll cultivate the first form of the city of will, smash. Lin Feng made the decision decisively. The perfect origin heart force in the world of the Golden Eye was limited and could only be used to its fullest extent. Moreover, there was another benefit to cultivating this smash of the City of Will. His main attack methods, other than the Origin Sea impact, were controlling attacks. The smash of the City of Will could also complement and increase its power. Most of the great Origin soul fruits had been consumed. After leaving the world of the Golden Eye, he would definitely go through countless battles. It would be good if he could obtain the great Origin soul fruits by then, but he had to be prepared for the worst. Moreover, I have an ultimate chaos treasure of the object manipulation element. I should be able to completely refine it while I'm in the world of the Golden Eye. Feeling the majestic power of the world of the Golden Eye, Lin Feng quickly entered a state of cultivation. He clearly knew that it would not be so easy to escape this time. Sheng Jin God had not been able to kill him this time, so the next storm would only be more violent. But at the same time, as long as they could not kill him, he would become stronger. Stronger and stronger. Let's see who will emerge victorious in the end. Lin Feng became stronger when facing a strong opponent. He had a heart that did not admit defeat. Since he dared to come to the 100 million wheels origin realm, he had naturally made the best preparations. He had never been afraid. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2790. Father, the Lord means. Tai Yaofu couldn't help but ask as they left the palace. The Lord's meaning isn't something we can guess. There's no need to ask. Just do as he says. The king of Titan looked solemn as he said, "Tell me everything that happened that day. Don't hide anything. Tell me everything." "Yes, father." Tai Yaofu had already recovered all his memories, so he remembered everything clearly. The defeat he had suffered that day was unforgettable. He had grown up under his father's wings since he was a child, so he had never experienced such a defeat. As he spoke, Tai Yinfu was filled with hatred for Lin Feng, who had killed him. Not only had Lin Feng caused him to lose face, but he also knew that his father had paid a heavy price to revive him. A human from sub-universe is actually so strong. According to what you said, the power of his sorcery has already reached the level of a peak Yuan Venerate or even higher. The king of Titan pondered for a moment before adding, "Strength is easy to obtain, but an internal universe is hard to find. This kid is Huang Zun, but his internal universe is already comparable to yours. If he doesn't have a special treasure, then what is it, father?" Tai Yaofu was even more curious. "Nothing." The king of Titan understood a little. "Go back and get ready immediately. Wait for my notice, and we will set off for the 100 million wheel origin realm together." Tai Yaofu's breathing quickened as his eyes lit up. "Father, are we going to kill that kid?" "The Lord wants him alive," the king of Titan replied coldly. Lin Feng didn't know that he was being targeted. However, even if he did, Lin Feng wouldn't have cared. There wasn't much difference between having one more enemy and one less enemy. At this moment, he was wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. The Qin Emperor's origin heart was indeed a treasure. Its ability was also top-notch among the ultimate chaos treasures. However, the difficulty of cultivating it was also top-notch. Lin Feng wasn't a mental cultivator and had only just come into contact with this aspect, so it would be difficult for him to comprehend it. Fortunately, I chose the City of Will Smash. When he started cultivating, Lin Feng discovered that the ability of a mental cultivator was multifaceted. It wasn't just related to one's source soul, it was also closely related to one's origin source body. Actually, it was normal. The strength of a mind cultivator was determined by the combination of the two. They played the role of support and commander. Combat strength was like this, and so was cultivation. Mental cultivation was like the military advisor of an army, while the origin soul and origin body were the two armies on the left and right. Without these two armies, no matter how strong a mental cultivation was, it would be difficult for it to display its power. The Qin Emperor's origin heart had two forms of power, which were the City of Will and the Nine Hells Baleful Qi. Among them, the City of Will focused more on power, while the Nine Hells Baleful Qi focused more on skill. If it was the Source Soul, the most important thing to control the City of Will was the Source Soul's Sourcey itself, while the most important thing to control the Nine Hells Baleful Qi was the Source Soul's ability to control it. For Lin Feng, it was naturally easier to control the City of Will. In addition, controlling his physical body's origin energy was one of Lin Feng's weaknesses. It took a lot of effort to control the Nine Hells Baleful Qi. Heart cultivators have two sides of the same coin. I use my origin soul to improve my mental cultivation. Although I can't use it with my origin energy to make my cultivation progress twice as fast, I can still use it to improve my mental cultivation. Later, as my mental cultivation level increases, I can use mental cultivation to improve my origin energy and source body. It will be twice as fast with half the effort. But then again, it's not easy to control the City of Will's smash. Just holding up the City of Will took a lot of effort. Controlling the City of Will to smash required countless experiments and control. It was like waving a saber. A soft saber or a random saber technique, without any order, was no threat at all. The main reason is that I don't have enough perfect source heart force. Lin Feng felt that although he had transformed his perfect source heart force, he was still like a chick that had just hatched from an egg. He was still immature. After all, the Qin Emperor's origin heart was a top-notch chaos cardinal treasure. In order to perfectly unleash its power, not only did it require control and comprehension, but it also required a solid foundation. Let's try using the origin C's energy. If one path didn't work, he would try another. The perfect source heart force was a form of support. Since he didn't use close-range attacks, he could fuse it with the origin C's energy before unleashing it. He didn't have enough perfect source heart force, but he had enough origin C's energy. Moreover, doing so would save him one step in cultivation. It was just that he lacked flexibility. Let's cultivate like this. Lin Feng gradually entered a good state. He sensed that the perfect source heart force in the GoldenEye world was being consumed very quickly, much faster than in the Silvereye world. Because he was cultivating the City of Will's smash, he was constantly consuming perfect source heart force. I have to hurry. Lin Feng felt the pressure. If he couldn't master the City of Will's smash in the GoldenEye world, it would be equivalent to opening the secret of the Qin Emperor's origin heart for nothing. He didn't know what would happen after the GoldenEye reincarnation. However, there was one thing that he was certain of, and that was the Seventh Universe's godly inquisition must have laid an inescapable net waiting for him. This was especially true for Sheng-Jin, Great Eternity God. Previously, he had allowed him to slip away right under his nose. 100 million wheel grave. Damn it, where did that guy go? An angry roar reverberated through this cold and dark tomb. Eternal God Sheng-Jin had an ugly complexion. One of the reasons for this was that he hadn't received any news about Lin Feng. The more he searched, the more anxious he became, and the more anxious his mood became. On the other hand, he had just been attacked by a Taichu cultivator. Sheng-Jin, Great Eternity God, didn't have any advantage here. No matter how good his treasures were, the internal universe of a peak Yuan Venerate Taichu cultivator suppressed him. Plus, no cultivator who could enter the 100 million wheel tomb was weak. Sheng-Jin, Great Eternity God, spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm and regained his cold expression. He was best at defense and preserving his life. Therefore, he had only been injured in the previous battle. However, he hadn't been injured in a very long time in the endless epochs of the origin universe. This time, he had been injured entirely because of Lin Feng. If he dares to enter the 100 million wheel tomb, there will be nothing left of him. Sheng-Jin, Great Eternity God, didn't believe that Lin Feng could survive in the 100 million wheel tomb. Even he wasn't confident. If this was the origin universe, I would have killed every one of these fellows that came. Sheng-Jin, Great Eternity God, was indignant. In the Origin universe, he could even compete with Almighties. How could he be afraid of these peak Yuan venerates? Forever has also arrived. He is in the great Samsara realm, and I am in the 100 million wheel tomb. As long as Lin Feng is not dead, we will find him. Sheng Jin, great eternity gods, his sharp eyes were filled with murderous intent. Lin Feng had escaped from him previously, which had been a great humiliation. He wouldn't give Lin Feng a second chance. Absolutely not. Chapter 2791. I did it. Lin Feng was overjoyed. In the Golden Eyes world, he had used the City of Will again and again without caring about the consumption of his perfect Origin Heart Force. Although he had only reached greater mastery and had not reached perfection, it was enough. Emperor Qin's Origin Heart is indeed a top-tier chaos treasure. Although it's only a greater mastery, the City of Will's smash is already comparable to an ordinary chaos treasure. If it reaches perfection, its power will be absolutely astonishing. Lin Feng also wanted to cultivate it to perfection, but it was not his time. More than 80% of the perfect Origin Heart Force in the Golden Eyes world had been consumed. The remaining 20% was not enough for him to continue cultivating. Besides, Lin Feng wanted to leave some time for other things. Greater mastery was enough. During this period of time, he had released the Endless Sea, which was a peak cultivation type chaos treasure. His Origin Sea had been constantly expanding. Previously, Lin Feng had not been able to transform his perfect Origin Sea because of his insufficient control over his Origin Soul. Now, however, he could transform it. I haven't reached my limit yet. Lin Feng could sense that this was not the limit of his Origin Sea's expansion. Although he could complete the transformation with his perfect Origin Heart Force, this was equivalent to squeezing out his own potential. Lin Feng did not want to do this. Even if he was surrounded by enemies and danger, he did not want to compromise. If he wanted to do something, he would do it to the best of his ability. Also, with the City of Will's smash, my Origin Sea's impact will be enough to break Sheng Jin's soul defense. Lin Feng was very confident that he had a chaos treasure. This was also why he had never thought of transforming his perfect Origin Sea. He still had the right to be willful. There seemed to be little time left in the Golden Eyes world, but there was still a lot left. As long as I don't continue to consume my perfect Origin Heart Force, the remaining 20% of perfect Origin Heart Force will give me at least twice as much time as before. Soon, I can complete the refinement before the time is up. Lin Feng had already refined the peak illusion type chaos treasure. After that, he had been refining the only chaos treasure that could control objects. Lin Feng walked deeper and deeper into the Origin Soul Dao. He was involved in many kinds of things. But wasn't he a mind cultivator? He was proficient in everything. He was flexible and had no weaknesses. He could deal with different kinds of enemies according to the best situation. 10 Desires Calamity. Lin Feng began to cultivate the illusion-type pinnacle chaos true treasure. There were many types of illusions, such as attacking illusions, confusing illusions, attacking attacks, and so on. The 10 Desires Tribulation was a pinnacle chaos true treasure that focused on pure illusions. It attacked the enemy with desire. 10 desires, 10 wills, 10 killer moves. Using illusions didn't require a strong control over one's source spirit. The power of the illusions depended on the strength of one's source spirit, and the key was one's willpower. All of Tai Yaofu's treasures had been carefully prepared by his father, the king of Tai Yaofu. They were all peak chaos treasures that were used to prevent Tai Yaofu from being ambushed and give him an advantage in battle. Hidden Raven was a life-saving treasure. Tai Yinfu was a Yuan venerate with one thought and wasn't good at close combat. Thus, he needed a supreme treasure that could protect his physical body. The attack-type Phantom Spider Hand and 10 Desires Tribulation both had the power of illusions and willpower attacks. Because Tai Yaofu was good at illusions and his willpower wasn't bad, these treasures were also compatible. However, they had all fallen into the hands of Lin Feng. Although Lin Feng didn't have much experience or understanding of illusions, Lin Feng also had a perfect source spirit and an abundant source sea. Most importantly, Lin Feng's willpower was much stronger than Tai Yaofu's. The willpower of an almighty. Illusions, actually, it's not that difficult. After cultivating the primordial heart of Qin Emperor, which was a top-grade supreme treasure of the chaos, Lin Feng found it much easier to cultivate another peak-grade treasure of the chaos. Especially with his strong willpower, he could master illusion-type treasures with twice the result with half the effort. Although it was impossible to reach perfection in a limited time, it wasn't a problem to reach the level of great success. Willpower combined with illusions is enough to increase the power of the illusions. Although the lower limit of illusions is low, the upper limit is much higher. It's often very effective against enemies with weak willpower and strong desires. 10 desires, tribulation, 1 tribulation at a time. Lin Feng cultivated in the golden-eyed world without any worries. Universe 7's Godly Inquisition had been searching for Lin Feng's whereabouts. Whether it was Sheng Jin, God of Eternity, or Eternal God of Eternity, they couldn't find any trace of Lin Feng. The entire millionth wheel origin world had been turned upside down, but Lin Feng seemed to have suddenly disappeared. If the will of the heavenly Tao didn't know that Lin Feng was still alive, Sheng Jin would have thought that Lin Feng had died. Where's this kid hiding? Eternity God, Sheng Jin couldn't understand this at all. If Lin Feng was still in the 100 million wheels origin realm, then there was no way they wouldn't have been able to find him. Even Eternity God Sheng Jin had explored half of the 100 million wheels tomb, which was an incredibly dangerous place, and he had even been injured in the process. However, there was still no news of Lin Feng. Sheng Jin frowned as he looked at the endless depths of the million-wheel tomb. He thought of a possibility, but shook his head. Impossible. Given his strength, it's impossible for him to enter the innermost part. If he couldn't enter, how could Lin Feng? Besides, what can he do even if he enters the innermost part of the million-wheel tomb? What for? Could it be that he wants to obtain the treasures left behind by the million-wheel master? Sheng Jin laughed self-deprecatingly. Although there were legends that the fated ones could obtain the treasures left behind by the million-wheel master, and there were also legends that there was another world inside the million-wheel tomb, no cultivator had ever seen or obtained it. In Sheng Jin's opinion, this was just a rumor that had been passed around. Even if there were treasures or immortal lands, they would have been dug up after countless epochs. Although Almighties couldn't enter the million-wheel tomb, many genius Yuan venerates had been born in the Taichu origin chaos universe, so it was normal for them to be comparable to ordinary Almighties. There were also plenty of top-notch Almighties, and many of them were comparable to extraordinary Almighties or even pinnacle Almighties. Damn it! Sheng Jin gritted his teeth as he looked away from the depths of the million-wheel tomb. He had never seen a kid who could hide so well. He had clearly set up an inescapable net, but Lin Feng always managed to find a gap to escape every time. There was no other way now. He could only continue searching. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh. A black phantom flew back from afar and turned into a Hongmeng stream of air before disappearing. A black fluorescent light flickered on Lin Feng's palm like a sinister spider baring its sharp fangs. The misty illusion glass had a different kind of charm. It was the ultimate chaos treasure of the object control system, the phantom spider hand, which Lin Feng had completely refined. It's time to leave. Although Lin Feng couldn't bear to part with these quiet days of cultivation, the energy of the GoldenEye realm was already extremely thin and on the verge of collapse. A calling feeling arose in his heart once again. Pop! Pop! The GoldenEye realm slowly shattered as Lin Feng's fighting spirit soared. Soon, a bloodbath was about to take place. I will definitely be the one to survive. Lin Feng stepped out of the GoldenEye realm resolutely. Genius 1 Second Memory Address. Mobile version website. Chapter 2792. What a strong calling. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. He left the world of the GoldenEye and entered a new world. This was neither the great reincarnation realm nor the small reincarnation realm. It was a sealed space. In the great reincarnation realm, he could see the boundless void and feel the vastness of the world. However, he couldn't feel it here. It was heavy, stifling, and palpitating. This was an area that would make one's heart tremble. It was a pitch-black and silent tomb. Crack! Lin Feng stepped on a corpse. After countless eras, it had already become loose. The tomb-like place was full of ghosts and mysteries. It seemed to hide a terrifying secret. This should be the deepest part of the 100 million wheels origin world. It's different from the outside. It's a world beyond the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Lin Feng had heard from Little Ling that the 100 million wheels origin world was a land of primordial chaos that had existed since the primordial era. Later on, spiritual consciousness had appeared, and a Khanate great expert, the Lord of 100 million wheels, was born. After that, the master of 100 million wheels died. Although the 100 million wheels origin world was the master of 100 million wheels internal universe, it was a part of the Hongmeng Sea. It was protected by the Hongmeng energy and didn't collapse. It could still maintain the operation of the Hongmeng nomological laws. It formed an inherent cycle, which was the small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm. Therefore, he could feel the Hongmeng energy and the majestic Hongmeng Sea in the small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm. This was because they were part of the Hongmeng Sea and were connected. However, this wasn't the case here. This was a broken internal universe, the core of the master of 100 million wheels. Is it because the Khanate Almighty is protected by the Hongmeng Sea, so his internal universe can remain intact even after he dies? Or is it because the external small reincarnation realm and the great reincarnation realm form a stable cycle that provides sufficient energy? Lin Feng walked through the broken walls. He could feel the traces of time. Everything here had a long history. He followed the call and gradually went deeper. The call became stronger and stronger. In the small reincarnation realm, he could barely feel it. In the great reincarnation realm, he could clearly feel it. But here, he didn't need to feel it. It was as if it was ringing in his ears and speaking to him. Cluck! Lin Feng's heart tightened. His brows furrowed slightly as the origin sea's energy condensed. Although he still hadn't sensed the enemy, his intuition told him that a powerful opponent was staring at him. It was an ability that had been honed through countless battles, a warning in his heart. As the level of his mental cultivation increased, Lin Feng's intuition also became sharper. However, that feeling only lasted for a moment before it disappeared. He left. Lin Feng did not doubt his own senses. Just now, there was definitely a powerful opponent spying on him. However, he did not know why that opponent suddenly left. Whether it was in the small world of Samsara or the big world of Samsara, Lin Feng had encountered too many such attacks. Seeing that he was Huang Zun, they were unscrupulous and bullied him. After all, the gap between the two stages was too huge. It seems that the cultivators here are more careful. It was best to avoid this kind of battle if possible. Although Lin Feng wanted to test his current combat strength, the number of Great Origin Soul Fruits was already quite low. Moreover, Universe 7's Godly Inquisition's Great Eternity God could appear at any time, so it was best to preserve his strength as much as possible. It's actually Huang Zun? Which of the top 100 cultivators on the Huang Zun list is he? A man with 2 sabers and a single horn on his head had scales all over his face. His eyes were flickering as his figure constantly changed. He was a peak Yuan Venerate and even stronger than Sacred Gold's Great Eternity God. He was a Taichu cultivator, Pai Sa. If he had encountered a peak Yuan Venerate, Pai Sa would not have hesitated at all and would have attacked immediately. However, he had encountered Huang Zun, which made Pai Sa very wary. This was different from the small world of Samsara and the big world of Samsara. In the tomb of 100 million Samsara, the lower the cultivation level of the cultivator one encountered, the more dangerous it was. Such a cultivator would definitely have very terrifying abilities. They would either have extraordinary strength, extraordinary treasures, or an extremely powerful backer. Regardless of which one it was, it would be very troublesome. For example, the number 1 cultivator on the Huang Zun list, Little Hong Saber Ruei, had the combat strength of an almighty. Thus, he did not even have the confidence to protect himself against Pai Sa. In fact, the top 100 cultivators on the Huang Zun list all had the combat strength of an almighty. To enter the 100 million wheel tomb, one had to pass through the golden eye samsara. Furthermore, everyone knew how dangerous the 100 million wheel tomb was. Even peak Yuan venerates would have a slim chance of survival if they entered. Therefore, Huangzun daring to enter was very abrupt and frightening. Paisan naturally would not take such a risk. There was a sudden tremor in the depths of the 100 million wheel tomb. Even those outside could clearly feel the aftermath of the tremor. It seems like something has happened. Paisa's eyes flickered. Could it be a sign that a treasure has been unearthed? If so, then I'm in luck. Crack! Crack! Paisa did not hide his ambition. Since he dared to take the risk to enter the 100 million wheel tomb, he naturally would not miss such an opportunity. What's going on? Sacred Gold was surprised. He had not found Lin Feng, but he had encountered a rare tremor in the 100 million wheel tomb. Sacred Gold was different from Paisa. Although he had come out of his own universe, he was the master eternal god who ruled the land. Thus, he was much more experienced than Paisa. Although Sacred Gold had not experienced the strange tremors in the 100 million wheel tomb, he had heard of them before. Every time there was a strange tremor, a treasure would appear. Sometimes there would be many treasures. There had even been a set of Hongmeng's source items that appeared once. For a peak Yuan venerate, this was like a sweet dew from the heavens. Below his feet, there were continuous tremors that appeared from time to time. This is a good opportunity. Sacred Gold shuddered. If Lin Feng was in the 100 million wheel tomb, then he would definitely head to the source of the tremors. After all, this was also a heaven-sent opportunity for Lin Feng. Having a clear target was much better than searching all over the huge 100 million wheel tomb. There were many restricted areas in the 100 million wheel tomb that Sacred Gold did not dare barge into. Thus, he could only search in areas that he was familiar with. In Sacred Gold's opinion, this might be the reason he had not been able to find Lin Feng. Swish! Like a sharp arrow, Shang Jin's great Ian god sped through the air, his speed extremely fast. This time there was a chance. Every time there is a tremor, there seems to be a stronger calling. At the moment, Lin Feng was carefully traveling through the 100 million wheel tomb. Although he had not encountered any other cultivators, this place did not feel ordinary. It was completely different from the great samsara realm. There were traps everywhere. Just now, Lin Feng had discovered a place where a small storm gathered. There seemed to be something hidden in the storm vortex, but the power of the storm was too terrifying. Given his physical defense, he reckoned that he would be completely torn apart if he got close to the storm. This was normal. After all, this was the internal universe of a Xiantian Almighty. Is this a treasure left behind by the 100 million wheel master? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. His intuition told him that the calling and the continuous tremors before him were connected by an invisible thread. Let's go take a look. Chapter 2793. What is this? Lin Feng, who had been traveling, suddenly stopped and looked ahead curiously. It was a wall covered in golden ripples. The ripples flowed like a stream, and in the middle of this flowing stream, there was an eye that was mixed with gold and silver. It was filled with perfect origin heart force. The energy is between the silver eye and the golden eye. They seem to be of the same type. This can't be the eye of reincarnation, right? Lin Feng shuddered. He had investigated the small samsara realm and the great samsara realm clearly all along the way. It could be said that he had explored more than 90% of the areas, but had not found any trace of the eye of samsara. This gold and silver eyeball was the first eyeball-type treasure he had ever seen. Ha! Lin Feng nodded as he held it in his hand. Even if this wasn't the eye of samsara, it was still an energy treasure that could replenish perfect source core force and was suitable for him. Obtaining the eye of samsara is a disaster-level mission. 1,000 military credits is the standard reward for a disaster-level mission. In other words, this is something an ordinary 12-star universe warrior can accomplish with all his might. A 12-star universe warrior was equivalent to an outstanding peak Yuan venerate. In terms of the 100 million Lun origin realms, it wouldn't be difficult for a top-notch universe warrior of this level to complete a mission in the Great Samsara realm. Their lives would only be threatened if they passed the golden eye of samsara. Most likely, Lin Feng put away the eye of samsara. Based on this analysis, the eye of samsara shouldn't be a rare item. If the mission could be completed, there would definitely be more than this one. There would definitely be more in other places. For the current him, the eye of samsara was something he needed. If I have the eye of samsara to replenish perfect source core force, I can use more control attacks with perfect source core force as the core. This way, the energy consumption of my source C will be reduced. There are less than 10 great source soul fruits left. I will save them for when I need them. The eye of samsara. Lin Feng nodded and looked around. This broken wall didn't look too special. The appearance of the eye of samsara didn't seem to have any special pattern. It seemed to have formed naturally. Maybe if I find a few more eyes of reincarnation, I'll find something. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to search. At this time, there were waves of tremors and ripples under his feet, and the aftermath was a little stronger than before. Lin Feng's eyes fell on the front, and a calling feeling surged into his heart. There seemed to be something waiting for him in the deep darkness. Let's go. Lin Feng didn't care too much about Universe 7's godly inquisition. Even if he knew that the God of Eternity would inevitably be around, he couldn't avoid it. Even if he wanted to hide, Universe 7's godly inquisition would always have a way to find him. Since that was the case, why avoid it? Do what you need to do. Whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng moved at lightning speed, sticking close to the barrier. There was one advantage to moving forward this way, and that was that he could avoid as much risk as possible. Although Lin Feng was confident in his senses, he also knew that there was always someone better out there. Anyone who could enter this place was definitely not an ordinary peak Yuan Venerate. Previously, there was an expert spying on him, but he was unable to detect it. Huang Zun's level, his internal universe, and the fact that he came from a child universe restricted him in all sorts of ways. I also have a probing type treasure. It should be done refining soon. In the world of the Golden Eye, Qin Emperor Yuan Xian's all-encompassing ability had started to refine the last special type pinnacle chaotic treasure after refining the ultimate chaos treasure, the Phantom Spider Hand. Now it was nearing the end. The grade of his probing type treasure should not be low. Lin Feng knew that a Taichu cultivator with so many treasures was obviously not an ordinary person. Thus, his probing type treasure would naturally not be bad. In the golden eye samsara of the 100 million wheel origin realms. Wu Chang, bring him out. I'll wait here. King Tidy's expression was solemn. His voice was as sonorous as iron, like an immovable mountain. Yes, my lord. A man with a huge sword on his back answered. He had a metal ring on his forehead, and his ink-black skin was covered in stripes. Although he was a peak Yuan Venerate, his aura was extremely powerful. The auras of the 9 peak Yuan Venerate powerhouses behind him weren't weak either. They were the elites of the 13 core. There was a special boundary around the 100 million wheel tomb. Almighties who entered would be killed immediately. There had been a few confident peak Almighties who had barged into the 100 million wheel tomb, but had not been able to escape death. Although the Titan Monarch was strong, he was only an extraordinary Almighty. Thus, he didn't dare take the risk. There were many peak Yuan Venerates in the 13 core. It was enough to select a team of elites to enter. Every elite brought by the Titan Monarch was comparable to an ordinary Almighty. Muzin was the number 1 peak Yuan Venerate powerhouse in the 13 core. His strength was comparable to a peak Almighty. Taisho, the Titan Monarch, turned his head. Father, Taisho replied. Follow Muzin. Don't take half a step away, the Titan Monarch instructed. Yes, father. Taisho was very obedient in front of his father. Of course, he also knew his own limitations. Taisho's strength was considered decent among mid-level Yuan Venerates, but he was far from qualified to enter the 100 million wheel tomb. Almost every powerhouse in the 100 million wheel tomb could kill him. However, with Muzin leading a team of elites from the 13th division, Taisho wasn't too worried. Furthermore, this was a good opportunity for him to avenge his humiliation. He had been obliterated by Huang Zun from the sub-universe. Now was the time for revenge. He didn't believe that Huang Zun could even defeat Muzin. It must be a treasure. It must be a Hong Meng source item. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caused such a huge commotion. It's better to come at the right time than to come early. This treasure will be mine. A bunch of ignorant fools. A huge commotion might not necessarily be a treasure. It could also be the birth of a monster or the collapse of the 100 million wheel tomb. When that happens, everyone will be buried alive. There are so many prey. We will definitely be able to kill to our heart's content this time. Winds and clouds surged. Within the 100 million wheel tomb, as the earthquake continued, the fluctuations became greater and greater. Powerhouses in the 100 million wheel tomb also emerged one by one. Among them were people who had been in the 100 million wheel tomb for countless epochs, while others, like Lin Feng, had just entered. However, they all had the same characteristic: very strong. The golden eye samsara prevented more than 90% of the peak Yuan venerate cultivators from entering. Those who could enter the 100 million wheel tomb were all powerhouses with strong willpower. Cultivators with strong willpower had firm beliefs and were much stronger than cultivators of the same level, regardless of whether they were righteous or evil. At the moment, Lin Feng was also rushing toward the source of the earthquake. All of a sudden, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as his speeding figure paused. A black light flashed in his hand, enlarging and turning into a black spider. The energy of the original sea condensed, and the perfect source heart force acted as the axis, blasting out instantly. Its speed was astonishing and its power was unparalleled. It was a supreme, chaotic treasure, the Phantom Spider Hand. Genius memorized this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2794. Dear friends, please forgive me at taking a day off for Blade Shatters the Galaxy. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 2795. How could one's shoes not get wet if they often walked by the river? Lin Feng only had the strength of a sovereign venerate. If he had been treated as an opponent in the small reincarnation realm, he would have been hated by everyone in the great reincarnation realm. Thus, many peak Yuan venerates would not miss such a prey in the 100 million wheel tomb. Not all powerhouses were as cautious as Pai Sa. So what if Lin Feng had a backer? They had not risked their lives to enter the 100 million wheel tomb for fun. They were fighting with their lives. Killing a peak Yuan venerate would reap great rewards, but killing Huang Zun with a backer would only reap more rewards. Let me send you on your way, little fellow. It was a bat-headed demon with a hooked nose and a pair of huge black wings on his back. He shuttled back and forth continuously in the narrow space. His comprehension of space had already surpassed the 13th level and reached the great perfection. Every peak Yuan venerate that entered the 100 million wheel tomb was extraordinary. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. A black spider suddenly appeared in the distance. Its 8 arms were covered in cesium, and layers of bubbles appeared wherever it passed, obstructing the space. A misty light flickered as the black spider moved extremely quickly. It's a controlling treasure of the supreme chaos. The bat-headed demon saw through it at a glance. He was not afraid of one-thought Yuan venerates that could control objects. He had absolute confidence in his movement techniques and control of space. Whoosh! The moment the black spider wrapped around the bat-headed demon, the space shattered like a net. The next moment, the bat-headed demon teleported in front of the black spider and stopped its attack. Sizzle, sizzle, the space collapsed and turned into fragments. The bat-headed demon's sharp screeches produced an exaggerated magnetic sound as it spread its wings and went straight for Lin Feng's head. It was so fast that it arrived in the blink of an eye. However, boom! This was the most direct attack from the Origin Sea. Just as the bat-head demon appeared in Lin Feng's line of sight, the demonic sound pierced through his brain. The bat-head demon let out a hysterical cry, his face a mixture of green and white, instantly twisting. Boom! The pinnacle soul defense true treasure shattered, and white light shone from his body. The color of blood permeated the air, and a sky blue light appeared, but it was extinguished in an instant. At the last moment, the bat-headed demon wanted to save his life and escape. He did have a special life-saving treasure of the chaos, but the impact of the origin sea was not only powerful, but also deadly. The moment the bat-headed demon's soul defense treasure shattered, it was over. Perhaps, if the bat-headed demons didn't resist and escape the instant their soul defensive true treasures blocked the attack, there would still be hope. However, was it possible to escape without resisting? His opponent was only Huang Zun. There are quite a few treasures here. Lin Feng's harvest was bountiful. In addition to many pinnacle chaotic cardinal treasures, the bat-headed demon clan also had many Hongmeng origin crystals. However, they did not have any supreme chaotic cardinal treasures. The peak Yuan venerates of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb were generally quite wealthy and were much wealthier than the powerhouses of the Great Samsara realm. However, supreme chaos true treasures were still relatively precious. The Phantom Arachnid Hand has a certain restraining ability, especially when it comes to spatial restrictions. However, Lin Feng had familiarized himself with the Phantom Arachnid Hand through battle and discovered many shortcomings. Firstly, his control over his Source Soul wasn't high, and secondly, his proficiency with the Phantom Arachnid Hand wasn't high. Although the Phantom Arachnid Hand, which had been fused with the City of Will, was very powerful, he had to be able to attack his opponent first. The bat-headed demon just now had very strong spatial attainments. Unfortunately, while he was strong in one aspect, he was also weak in another. His defense was much weaker than Shang Jin's great Eternity God. It would be great if there were great Source Soul fruits. What Lin Feng needed the most now was great Source Soul fruits. Treasures and whatnot could make do for a while. However, if there weren't enough great Source Soul fruits, the energy of the Source Sea would be greatly depleted and he wouldn't be able to use his trump card. This would have a huge impact on Lin Feng. After all, this was what allowed him to establish himself in this place. The death of the bat-headed demon didn't count for much in the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. In this cruel purgatory, there was nothing but killing. If they encountered a weak opponent, they would kill them. If they encountered a strong opponent, they would avoid them. Everyone played the role of both hunter and prey as they traveled through the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. Moreover, the 100 Million Wheel Tomb itself was also very dangerous. Many forbidden areas were filled with danger, and many natural hazards even Almighties couldn't escape from. This was because this was the true core of the 100 Million Wheel Master. A Khanate Almighty born from the 100 Million Wheel origin world would have a 100 Million Wheel origin world in their internal universe. However, the 100 Million Wheel Master had his own consciousness and core, and his core was located in the deepest part of the 100 Million Wheel origin world. It was something that hadn't existed in the beginning, the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. This wasn't the tomb of the 100 Million Wheel Master, but the heart of the 100 Million Wheel Master. Impressive, Lin Feng sighed. After killing the bat-headed demon for the first time, the next 3 battles had all ended in a draw. The opponent of the second battle was a special life form that was adept at concealment and had been waiting in ambush in the dark. If it hadn't been for Xinqiu's strength and vigilance, it would have been very dangerous. After all, Lin Feng's defense wasn't very strong. The opponent of the third battle was a fire-controlling Yuan Venerate that was similar to the Black Flame Eternal God. It used the Hongmeng's Sacred Fire Fruit as its core, and its offensive power was off the charts. Furthermore, it was adept at both close combat and long-range attacks. After a long battle with the Phantom Spider Hand, neither of them could do anything to the other and eventually retreated. Lin Feng didn't give chase, nor did he use his Source Ocean to forcefully kill his opponent. It wasn't worth it whether he could kill his opponent or not. The fourth opponent that Lin Feng had just encountered was the strongest one that he had encountered since entering the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. Not only had his yin-yang integration technique reached a perfect level, but his internal universe had also completely suppressed his body. His attainments in time and space were also extremely high, reaching the 13th level. His strength was very comprehensive. The Phantom Spider Hand was completely ineffective against him. This was also the first time that Lin Feng had encountered a strong opponent that controlled a supreme, chaotic ultimate treasure. In Lin Feng's opinion, this person's strength was even above the sacred gold eternal gods. Even his Source Soul's defense was a supreme, chaotic ultimate treasure. If he hadn't retreated in fear, it would have been hard to say who would have won. My own strength can be said to be at the bottom of the list here. After a few battles, Lin Feng also understood that although the Phantom Spider Hand was very strong, his Source Soul's control over it couldn't even unleash a 10,000th of its power. Rather than using the Phantom Spider Hand, it was more like using it as a carrier to unleash the City of Will's smash attack. The City of Will's smash attack at the large success stage had astonishing power. However, his internal universe wasn't as strong as his opponent's, so he was at a huge disadvantage in this aspect. However, he had trump cards and killer moves. His own Source Ocean's destructive power was extremely great. Coupled with the City of Will's smash attack, it was even more successful. The few battles were enough to prove this. There was always a taller mountain. Perhaps he would encounter an opponent with a top-notch Source Soul defense. At that time, he would be in trouble. The refining is complete. Lin Feng's heart stirred. Chapter 2796. It was a special type pinnacle chaos treasure, seamless. It could be used without mastery. This was the advantage of a special type treasure. Its upper limit might not be high, but its lower limit was not bad. It was especially suitable for Lin Feng, who was running out of time. It could be used without mastery. It could send out imperceptible ripples through space. Not only could it detect enemies in the surroundings, but it could also detect treasures or other special things nearby. It could not be seen with the naked eye, but seamless detection ability could. Any energy fluctuation could not be hidden from seamless, unless the opponent's concealment ability was heaven-defying. If one wanted to move, there would always be a slight change. Aura detection might not be able to detect the opponent because many experts used their energy in an instant and then concealed themselves. At this time, Seamless could detect. If I refined it earlier, I would have been able to detect the ambushing enemy in the second battle. Lin Feng also felt lucky. If he had not been vigilant at that time, he would have died. The opponent's concealment ability was too amazing. There was no sound at all, but now that he had Seamless, he did not need to worry. Continue refining. The all-encompassing ability of the Qin Emperor's origin heart was the biggest advantage for Lin Feng. He did not need to control it and could refine it on his own. Generally, refining a pinnacle chaos treasure would not take too much time. The 4 treasures from Tai Yin Fu had been refined, but Lin Feng still had many pinnacle chaos treasures with him. One of them was the Indigo special type pinnacle chaos treasure he had just obtained from killing the bat-headed demon. Lin Feng had seen the bat-headed demon use it when he killed it. Unfortunately, he had died before he could use it. This was a life-saving pinnacle chaos treasure. At present, he needed it the most. Rumble, rumble. The earth was still shaking violently. Lin Feng could clearly feel the aftermath of the tremors under his feet. Even at such a distance, the tremors were so obvious. It was obvious how powerful the tremors were at the epicenter. I wonder what's happening inside. Lin Feng's curiosity was piqued. With the appearance of a strange phenomenon, there was bound to be a strange treasure. Although Lin Feng didn't think that he would be able to obtain a strange treasure and that it might be very dangerous, he had never been afraid. As an expert, he couldn't be afraid of the slightest thing. Most importantly, he had sensed something calling out to him as soon as he entered the origin realm, and it was right in front of him. The source of the tremors. Whoosh, whoosh, chi. Figure after figure rapidly advanced through the various passages of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. Their destination was the same as Lin Feng's. These Peak Yuan venerate powerhouses who lived on the edge of a blade wouldn't miss such a grand occasion. A black skinny figure with a black headband and a black cloak appeared. He held a black dagger in his hand. He looked unremarkable, but he was one of the strongest in the 100 Million Wheel Tombs. Rapier Shadow. Countless souls had died under his black dagger. Although he had not been in the 100 million will tomb for long, he had killed tens of thousands of people, and his reputation was illustrious. Rumble. Every step he took seemed to shake the heavens and earth. It was a burly man carrying a giant greenish-purple hammer. His huge body was comparable to 10,000 rapier shadows, and the giant hammer flickering with greenish-purple light could smash a peak yuan venerate into smithereens if it smashed down. Ha ha ha! He laughed strangely as he hurried along. Although this burly man looked unremarkable, his reputation wasn't any worse than rapier shadows. He had stayed in the 100 million wheel tomb for many eras, and no powerhouse had been able to kill him, including rapier shadow. He called himself the Green Hammer King. Everyone, be careful. Don't get too close to the light circle ahead. Be careful, it will gradually spread. Many powerhouses had already gathered at the source of the tremors. The most eye-catching one was a four-armed man in blue light armor. He had two spiral horns on his forehead and had the aura of an emperor. He was giving orders to the powerhouses like a leader. The group of unruly powerhouses also believed in him. Although the light circle at the source of the tremors was shining brightly and the energy aura was intense, no one was greedy enough to approach it under his command. Heavenly King Zhao Quan. In addition to these three, there were many other powerhouses with decent strength in the 100 million wheel tomb. For example, old immortal Mingyu, who was good at using poison, the rolling blade disciple, who had top-notch fighting abilities, and the Yin-Yang demon hand, who had completely suppressed Lin Feng and escaped unscathed after being hit by the Source Ocean. There was also Muzin, who had just led the 13 Corps and led 9 elite universe soldiers comparable to Almighties. This was an even greater force. Muzin himself had the strength of a top-notch Almighty. Although the news of the 100 million wheel tomb being unearthed had already spread, it would take a long time for them to enter the 100 million wheel origin realm from the Taichu origin realm to pass through the small Samsara realm and the great Samsara realm. It would be too late by the time they arrived. The ones who could really fight for the treasure were the powerhouses in the 100 million wheel tomb. Of course, this included Eternal God Shengjin, who was painstakingly searching for Lin Feng. Eternal God Shengjin was also heading toward the source of the tremors, hoping to meet Lin Feng there. The 100 million wheel tomb was too big, and there were too many forks in the road. It was too complicated, and they had to face all kinds of unknown dangers. Finding Lin Feng was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was not easy. The Eternal Ian God was able to stand guard outside and wait peacefully because this wasn't a mission he was responsible for. Him coming to help Shengjin was already giving the Eternal Ian God a lot of face, so he naturally wouldn't lower himself to help. Unless Eternal God Shengjin begged him. It's been so long, and you still can't find Lin Feng. Shengjin, you are really useless. Eternal God Shengjin was wearing the Pope's robe and holding a scepter. He floated quietly in the air, sacred and inviolable. Come and beg me, Shengjin. Lin Feng was in a lot of danger. The deeper he went into the 100 million wheel tomb, the more enemies he encountered. The Phantom Spider Hand was not strong enough, so Lin Feng could not use any other killing moves apart from his Source C. As for the Mirage Sea Dark Sand, it was only a perfect Chaos Supreme treasure, and its grade was too low. The greatest danger did not come from the enemy, but from himself. There are only 2 great Source Soul Fruits left. Lin Feng was having a headache. After entering this place, he had fought more than a dozen battles and used his Source C attack too many times. Although he had killed 2 peak Yuan Venerates and gained a lot, including Hongmeng Source Crystals, the problem was that he had no use for them now. On the other hand, he had obtained another Eye of Samsara, which Lin Feng used to replenish his perfect Source Heart Force. However, the Great Source Soul Fruits were getting fewer and fewer. If he continued to use them, it would be a disaster. Lin Feng had encountered a Yuan Venerate one thought before. One was from the demon race, while the other was a special life form. The former fought fiercely and was evenly matched, while the latter's battle was shallow, and it had fled before even seeing Lu Shan's face. If this continued, he would definitely run out of ammunition and food. I have to think of a way. Lin Feng had already slowed down. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2797. There were only two ways to do so. First, he could start from within himself. Second, he could start from the outside. He could start from within himself by finding a place to cultivate in peace and improve his internal universe. His control of the phantom spider hand would increase, and he would be able to contend with a peak Yuan venerate. The energy consumption of his source, C, would also be greatly reduced. He could start from the outside by searching for the great origin soul fruit. It would undoubtedly be very difficult to find it in the 100 million wheel origin realm. He could either leave the 100 million wheel origin realm and return to Feather God Ridge, or obtain it from other first thought Yuan venerates. Leaving the 100 million wheel origin realm and returning to Feather God Ridge would be a joke. Lin Feng was sure that Gold Eyes and Silver Eyes were in a dangerous place. If he could get in, he wouldn't be able to get out, unless he obtained a special treasure that would allow him to leave without being noticed. Or perhaps this special peak primal chaos treasure can give me a pleasant surprise. Lin Feng did not have much hope for this. Generally, special primal chaos treasures that could protect one's life were already pretty good. It would be too extravagant to hope that it had additional special functions. If he did not want to find a place to hide and cultivate, there was only one way. He had to find other first thought Yuan venerates. However, this was easier said than done. Even if he found them, they would not be so easy to kill. It was not as if he had not encountered them before. The first thought Yuan venerates here were much stronger than those in the great Samsara realm, and there would not be so many fish for him to kill. The impact of his source spirit was not weak, but the source spirit of a first thought Yuan venerate was much stronger than other Yuan venerates. There was no other way now. He could only take it one step at a time. If there was no other way, he could only find a place to cultivate and recover the energy of his source, see, while cultivating. Although it was not a good plan, it was not a bad one. Rushing forward blindly was the most foolish way to do things. In the 100 million wheel burial mount, whoosh, a figure that looked like a nouveau riche, whose entire body was glowing with golden light, arrived with his chest puffed out. This was a special life form that looked like an ancient ape. Its potential and talent were extraordinary, and the aura of a peak Yuan venerate emanated from it. Ha! I, Lord Maier, am here. Golden Eye Samsara is just so. He had an arrogant and complacent look on his face. He was none other than Wei, who had been beaten twice by Lin Feng and had been forced to buy the Arhut Luohan Jade. However, this was also a blessing in disguise. After using the secret technique, he returned to his sect to cultivate and broke through to become a high-level Yuan venerate in one fell swoop. Then, under the careful nurturing of his teacher, he advanced by leaps and bounds in just a few dozen eras and naturally became a peak Yuan venerate. Makok's talent was extremely high, and he had a teacher to guide him. Now that he had been humiliated twice by the same Huang Zun, Makok felt even more indignant and stifled. Now, Maier's strength had greatly improved, and he had entered the 100 million wheel tomb for the first time with his peak chaos true treasure, the golden rod. Maier wasn't the only one. Many peak Yuan venerates in the great Samsara realm had entered the 100 million wheel tomb after news of the treasure's unearthing spread. Anyone who could pass the golden eye Samsara and was ambitious enough would enter. Who knows, maybe the treasure would fall on their heads. Every cultivator had some extravagant hopes in their hearts. They all wanted to obtain some fortuitous encounters. This was normal. The aftershocks of the tremors are indeed very strong. Teacher is right. This is a great opportunity. Let's see if I can obtain it. Maier brandished the golden rod in his hands, and mystic inscriptions revealed themselves. Now, he could perfectly control this top-notch peak chaos true treasure. His strength had also improved greatly. After becoming a peak Yuan venerate, his internal universe had also been strengthened to the limit. Now, Maier was more than 10 times stronger than he had been when he had fought Lin Feng. Since he dared to enter the 100 million wheel tomb, he naturally had a certain level of confidence. Hua. The golden rod exuded intense energy and boundless strength. My air's roar echoed like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins and charged forward bravely and fearlessly. It's a pity that I can't bump into that little fellow Huang Zun in the great Samsara realm. Otherwise, let's see if my golden rod doesn't smash him to death. The battles in the 100 million-wheel burial mound didn't stop. Just like the aftershocks of the tremors, the closer one got to the source of the tremors, the more opponents one would encounter. Lin Feng's cultivation base was at a disadvantage compared to Huang Zun's, so most of the powerhouses would target him. Last one, Lin Feng sighed helplessly. The great source soul fruits, abundant energy, replenished the energy of his source sea. Although he didn't want to consume it and avoided battles as much as possible, the more he avoided his opponents, the more his opponents wouldn't want to let him go. It was normal to bully the weak and fear the strong. Although he had killed a peak Yuan Venerate and obtained many treasures, none of them were as precious as a great source soul fruit to Lin Feng. He had never encountered a Yuan Venerate with one thought either. Everything seemed to be destined. Looks like I'm not fated to obtain this treasure. Lin Feng was also decisive. Since the great source soul fruit had been exhausted, he couldn't advance any further. Relying on luck alone wouldn't last long. Countless powerhouses would gather at the source of the tremors, so he would be a sitting duck if he entered without anything. After all, the great Ian God of Universe, Seven's divine tribunal, was frantically searching for him. If the treasure was gone, then so be it. If his life was gone, then it would really be gone. Retreat. No matter how strong the calling was, Lin Feng remained indifferent. He naturally had to take a risk. However, the premise was his own safety. He didn't even have the ability to protect himself, so how could he take a risk? He would just be throwing his life away. Actually, on the other hand, it's also a good thing that treasures have been unearthed. Lin Feng retreated in a carefree manner. All the powerhouses are gathered at the source of the tremors. The other places are empty, so the safety factor is greatly increased. I can find a secluded place far away from the source of the tremors and cultivate in peace. In the end, I still need other abilities besides the source sea. Taking an unconventional path isn't a long-term plan. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. Lin Feng knew very well that this wasn't his forte. Mind cultivators should master many kinds of abilities and counter every move. Furthermore, he was an origin source primal chaos venerate, so he was well-versed in all kinds of cultivation. Previously, he had been forced by Universe 7's divine tribunal and had had no choice. However, if he could survive this time, he couldn't be so passive anymore. Given my attainments in source spirit, I can already break through to the origin source primal chaos venerate. During this period, Lin Feng's source spirit had improved rapidly, but his physical body and strength had stagnated. There were gains and losses. In order to break through to the origin source primal chaos venerate, both the origin source body and source spirit had to have the corresponding strength. Once I break through to the origin source primal chaos venerate, my internal universe will be comparable to the vast majority of peak Yuan venerate powerhouses in the Taichu origin primal chaos universe. Lin Feng had a deep understanding of this. Otherwise, the Phantom Spider Hand, a supreme primal chaos treasure, would be much more powerful. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2798. Lin Feng was no longer a rookie in the 100 million wheel tomb. Although he still couldn't completely recognize the way, he was much more familiar with it than when he had first entered. He wouldn't get lost or run around randomly. There were many forbidden areas in the 100 million wheel tomb, so it was dangerous to wander around randomly. However, the 100 million wheel tomb was still the 100 million wheel tomb. Going forward meant fighting, but retreating meant running into enemies. This time, Lin Feng felt different. This battle was much easier than in the past. He used the Phantom Spider Hand and the City of Will to knock his opponent unconscious time and time again. They were both peak Yuan venerates, but the difference in strength could be huge. This demon race powerhouse was only good at attacking. His speed wasn't good, and his defense was mediocre. After dozens of battles, I've finally encountered a fish. There was always a better mountain. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile. If he only used the Phantom Spider hand, he would be at the bottom here. However, it was only almost because there were definitely people weaker than him. Right now, there was one. This demon race powerhouse could still put up a fight if he had encountered other close combat opponents. However, he was completely restrained by controlling Yuan Venerate. If Lin Feng used the Origin Seas attack, he could easily kill him. With a roar, the injured demon race powerhouse finally escaped. Lin Feng didn't kill him because Source Sea energy was very precious. He also didn't chase him because there was no need to. However, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. Such an opponent was like a sparring partner who helped Lin Feng practice the Phantom Spider hand, improve his proficiency, and improve his control of Source Souls. The improvement in battle was the fastest. Lin Feng had peak cultivation Chaos Ultimate Treasures, the Universal Extreme Source, which could improve the quality of his Source Soul, and the Endless Blue Ocean, which could expand his Source Sea. However, he didn't have any that could improve his control of his Source Soul. He could only rely on himself to slowly cultivate step by step. The first time was a coincidence, but it wasn't a coincidence if he encountered such a fish a second or third time. It seems like many ordinary peak Yuan Venerates have entered. Lin Feng understood right away. News of the treasure being unearthed must have spread. Thus, all the peak Yuan Venerates who could break through the GoldenEye Samsara had squeezed in to try their luck. What a pity! Lin Feng sighed in his heart. The chances of killing a Yuan Venerate, one thought among this group of peak Yuan Venerates, would undoubtedly be much higher. However, he no longer had any great origin soul fruits, so he had to take a huge risk every time he attacked his Source Sea. If he failed to kill them, what awaited him would be a nightmarish pursuit, and he would be powerless to fight back. There was nothing to regret. After all, he didn't know that things would develop like this. All the decisions he made before were absolutely correct at that moment. Let's find a place to cultivate first. Lin Feng had no interest in tangling with these fishes. The most important thing for him was to make the best use of his time to improve his combat strength. Once the treasure was unearthed and the dust settled, the entire region would once again become a place where heroes vied for supremacy. It would be much more dangerous. Haha, weak, so F Aster's King weak. Holding a golden pestle and wearing a long Kai armor, the completely transformed macaque looked awe-inspiring and invincible. Since he entered the 100 million will tomb, he had won 4 and drawn 1 out of the 5 battles. This gave him a lot of confidence. The current him was very strong. The experts of the 100 million wheel tomb were nothing special. It's just that my internal universe is strong and my treasures are better. Hee hee. Macaque was brimming with confidence. He had been worried that he would encounter danger in the 100 million wheel tomb, but after a few battles, he realized that the opponents here weren't much stronger than those in the Great Samsara realm. His internal universe wasn't weaker than other Yuan Venerate powerhouses now. Although he didn't have a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure, his bloodline talent wasn't inferior to a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. Furthermore, he had all kinds of treasures. His offense was strong, his speed wasn't weak, and his defense wasn't weak. He had no weaknesses. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to kill his opponents in 5 battles. I will definitely be able to in the next battle. Macaque was very confident. As he sped along, he suddenly sensed an aura and his eyes lit up. Hiding in a corner sneakily, either you're weak or you're seriously injured. Haha, look at my big stick. I will smash you to death. Macaque was very excited. He had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Before entering the 100 million wheel tomb, his teacher had specially equipped him with a peak chaotic ultimate treasure to ensure that he was safe. It just so happened that he could use it. The opponent he sensed was also using this type of peak chaotic ultimate treasure, so it was clear that it was like a magnet colliding with a magnet. Whoosh! Macaque was very fast. After transforming into a peak Yuan Venerate, the potential in his body had been fully realized. His bloodline talent was undoubtedly on full display. Macaque displayed the characteristics of the ancient Meng ape race: fast speed, strong attack, and invincible strength. This was also the reason why he had been able to continuously defeat strong opponents after entering the 100 million wheel tomb. He was rapidly approaching. Makak's eyes were filled with ambition. This was a battle that he was determined to win. However, the strange thing was that his opponent clearly knew that he was approaching. Not only did he not move or escape, but he also didn't release his aura. Were his injuries too serious? Or was he absolutely confident in his own strength? Makak would have been more at ease if his opponent had fled in a panic. However, his opponent wasn't moving at all, which made Makak feel uneasy instead. His intuition told him that something bad was about to happen. Chi! A beam of black light appeared in an instant. It was a black spider glowing with a misty light. Its 8 spider arms reached out to grab at Yifutian. The boundless light contained an illusion. A city the size of a mountain suddenly appeared in the void, causing the black spider to become extraordinarily large in an instant. What is this? Makak was a little stunned. He had never seen such an attack before. However, it was obvious that his opponent this time was proficient in controlling attacks. Furthermore, this was a supreme, chaotic treasure. Oh no! Makak's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate this time. However, he was even more confident in himself after the transformation of his strength. In the past, he would have fled already. However, he wanted to fight it out now. A Yuan venerate with one thought was nothing. As long as he could get close enough, he could trample on him. Crack! Makak's fighting spirit surged as he gritted his teeth. Boom! The golden pestle collided with the black spider. In an instant, the huge city came crashing down. Makak felt a sharp pain between his thumb and index finger. He almost lost his grip on the golden pestle, and his breath was sucked back into his body. He was dizzy, and his head was buzzing. A heart force cultivator. After this round of battle, Maier immediately knew the identity of his opponent. He frowned slightly. Apart from the perfect source heart force, he also sensed a familiar aura. Very familiar. No, very familiar. When the black spider appeared again, a figure faintly appeared in the void and entered his line of sight. No way! Makak turned pale with fright. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. He had already sensed his opponent completely. The nightmarish aura of Huang Zun was deeply imprinted in his heart like a demon. Why'd he bumped into him again? Chapter 2799. To Maier, Lin Feng was a nightmare. He had never forgotten the 2 times he had fought with Lin Feng. Both times, he had been taught a painful lesson. A Huang Zun human from Sub-Universe had beaten him, a Taichu cultivator from a famous family. It was a humiliation. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. Maier had returned to the chaotic universe of the Taichu origin and worked hard to cultivate. He had used his unyielding will to cross the bottleneck and force himself to complete the breakthrough. He was very strong now. In Maier's opinion, he was 100% confident that he could kill that Huang Zun human if he met him again. But now, boom! It was yet another round of confrontation. The black spider's eyes flashed with a strange luster. Maier's already shaken will was affected even more. Although his internal universe was stronger than Lin Feng's, Maier's mental state and the situation made it difficult for him to move. Why was he here? This was the 100 million wheel grave. Moreover, when did his control attacks become so powerful? Others might not know, but Maier had fought with Lin Feng before. He knew that Lin Feng was only strong in one aspect, and that was his source soul attack. Everything else was average. But this time, Lin Feng had suppressed him with only his control attacks. Once Lin Feng used his source soul attack, it would be terrible. 2 crushing defeats had left a deep shadow in Maier's heart. Facing Lin Feng, he was naturally mentally weaker. Coupled with the setback he had suffered, he fell into deep self-doubt. The difference in strength between self-confidence and lack of self-confidence would be very big. Boom! The phantom spider attacked again and again. Its attack power was much stronger than when it had just been refined. Lin Feng appeared in the sky and looked down at Maier, his eyes flashing. He had already sensed Maier when he approached. In terms of sensing ability and probing ability, Lin Feng was naturally superior to Makak. In fact, even Lin Feng hadn't expected to meet my heir again in the 100 million-wheel grave. It was indeed fate. Stop, brother, stop. He's one of us. Seeing that he couldn't win, Macaque shouted shamelessly. This wasn't his first time anyway, so he was very familiar with it. The last time he shouted, Lin Feng had stopped. This time, as expected, Lin Feng stopped again. Lin Feng looked at my heir. You're the one who's going to fight, and you're the one who's not going to fight. My heir laughed awkwardly and said, Brother, I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I wouldn't have made a move. We are comrades who have fought side by side. Macaque was smart to bring up the past. That day when he fought side by side with Lin Feng. Although it wasn't a favor, at least Lin Feng would remember his kind intentions. Sure enough, Lin Feng's fighting spirit dissipated a lot in an instant. That's the third time. Lin Feng landed in front of my heir. The flood washed over the Dragon King Temple. It's a misunderstanding. My heir's face was full of smiles as he apologized profusely. He didn't dare to offend Lin Feng. After all, my heir had personally experienced the terrifying power of this inconspicuous human emperor's origin sea. Last time, he could escape with the Arhut Pearl Jade, but this time, over the past few days, his opponent's strength had increased tremendously. Even the control attacks, which he wasn't good at in the past, were now on par with him. How powerful was his strongest trump card now? It was hard to imagine. The Arhut Pearl Jade could only block attacks below the power of an almighty. If the attack power exceeded that of an almighty, it would lose its effect. Although my heir could escape, he didn't want to take the risk. Moreover, he had interacted with Lin Feng before and knew that he wasn't a difficult person to talk to. As long as he was willing to apologize and smile, Lin Feng would accept it. Do you have the Arhut Pearl Jade? Lin Feng went straight to the point and said, I won't let you lose out. Then he took out a peak chaos treasure and flew it to my heir. Pa! My heir caught it almost reflexively. Just as he was about to take a look at the treasure's value, his expression changed slightly. He knew that he had been tricked by Lin Feng again. Regardless of the treasure's value, when he caught it, his expression and actions clearly told Lin Feng that he had the Arhut Pearl Jade. However, in terms of value, this peak chaos treasure was of good quality. It was enough to exchange for an Arhut Pearl Jade. Here, my heir didn't hesitate. He took out the Arhut Pearl Jade and threw it to Lin Feng. Although his sect had ordered him not to sell it, he wasn't selling it to a Taichu cultivator, so no one would be able to find out. Once was dirty, twice was dirty. Anyway, it wasn't the first time he had traded with Lin Feng. Thank you. Lin Feng took the Arhut Pearl Jade and refined it. It turned into a wisp of red light and disappeared into his chest. There seemed to be an extra soul and life in his body, like a guardian deity. To Lin Feng, the more life-saving treasures he had, the better. Nice working with you. My heir had already put away the peak chaos treasure. He grinned and said, Then I'm leaving. We'll meet again if fate wills it. Wait. Lin Feng suddenly spoke. My heir felt a chill down his spine and cold sweat seeped out his forehead. What he wanted most was to get rid of Lin Feng as soon as possible. Being around this dangerous guy made him tremble with fear. Who knew when Lin Feng would kill him? Ha! Brother Lin, is there anything else? My heir forced a smile and squinted his eyes. His voice trembled. Do you have a great sour soul fruit with you? Lin Feng asked. My heir shook his head. I really don't have it, brother. Do me a favor. Lin Feng knew that my heir didn't have it. For my heir, who cultivated his body and strength, it was useless for him to have a great sour soul fruit. But even if he didn't have it, he could get it. My heir pulled a long face. He knew things wouldn't go so smoothly. He was secretly accumulating power. If Lin Feng's request was too harsh, my heir would rather lose a treasure and risk his sour soul being severely damaged to escape. Help me exchange 150 great sour soul fruits, and I'll give you 5 Hongmeng source crystals as a reward. After killing several peak Yuan venerates, Lin Feng had accumulated 20 Hongmeng source crystals. Although it wasn't a lot, it was at least more valuable than the peak chaos treasure. 1 Hongmeng source crystal was equivalent to 100 military credits. 1 great sour soul fruit was worth 10 military credits. 150 great source soul fruits were worth 15 Hongmeng source crystals. Adding the 5 Hongmeng source crystals as a reward, it was exactly 20 Hongmeng source crystals. Oh, my heir's eyes lit up. This was undoubtedly a good deal for him. He would make a profit without any danger. Great source soul fruits weren't rare items. As long as he had Hongmeng source crystals, he could exchange for as many as he wanted. Do you have Hongmeng source crystals? My heir remembered that Lin Feng didn't have any the last time he asked Lin Feng. Yes. Lin Feng was straightforward. He took out 20 Hongmeng source crystals and tossed one to my heir. This is the deposit. I'll wait for you here. Deal. My heir accepted the Hongmeng source crystal without hesitation. Chapter 2800. Lin Feng knew very well that he had to pay the price if he wanted help. 5 Hongmeng source crystals was not a low reward. It was equivalent to 500 military credits. The reward for completing this disaster-level mission was only 1,000 military credits. For my heir, it was just a round trip to the 100 million Lunar origin realms. Since he could enter this place unscathed, he could naturally leave and enter again. Furthermore, 10 military credits for 1 fruit was the exchange rate in the Hongmeng realm. The Taichu origin universe might have a more affordable price, or Taichu cultivators might have the privilege of exchange. Lin Feng did not care about any of this. Why would my heir be willing to come back if he did not let him earn more? My heir was not stupid, and neither was Lin Feng. Making a deal relied on mutual benefits, not one side taking advantage of the other. Being able to meet an acquaintance here was also a stroke of luck for Lin Feng. He was pondering how to obtain a great origin soul fruit. Not only was it dangerous to rely on killing other first thought Yuan venerates, but it was also unknown whether he could succeed. However, there was no way to obtain a great origin soul fruit other than that, as there were no such treasures in the 100 million Lin origin realms. Completely mastering the Phantom Spider Hand through cultivation was not something that could be done overnight. It just so happened that my heir appeared. Everything is fated. Lin Feng believed that if nothing unexpected happened, my heir would definitely return. With my heir's intelligence, he clearly knew that not only would he be able to earn a good reward, he would also be able to earn a favor from Lin Feng. Why not? Furthermore, it was not a one-time deal. However, a round trip will probably take a lot of time. Lin Feng had entered through the great Samsara realm and knew how big it was. Traversing through it would take too long. However, it did not matter. In fact, it would just be a waste of an opportunity to participate in the unearthing of a treasure. His chances of obtaining a treasure were not high to begin with. During this period, he could cultivate in peace. I hope I don't encounter the great Ian God during this period. Lin Feng was also a little worried. If the other party was really searching for his whereabouts, he would definitely not be able to hide. Fortunately, he encountered a treasure unearthed. If Universe God of Universe 7's Godly Inquisition was smart enough, he would have certainly gone in the direction of the epicenter, because the probability of finding him there was the highest. It will take a while for the treasure to be unearthed. Lin Feng smiled. While refining the peak primal chaos ultimate treasure, he also cultivated the Phantom Spider Hand while dealing with countless peak Yuan venerates. Every once in a while, he would encounter a few cultivators with ill intentions who treated him as practice. The peak Yuan venerates that had just entered were clearly much weaker than the peak Yuan venerates that had entered the 100 million Will tomb earlier. As for those super experts who had heard the news, they were still on their way. However, they should be faster than Macaque. This was what Lin Feng thought. However, not long after he started cultivating, Macaque appeared before Lin Feng again. Lin Feng was shocked. So fast. Macaque chuckled. Brother Lin Feng, you are not in a hurry. Of course, I have to be faster. After saying that, he took out a storage ring. Just as he was about to speak, his vision blurred. 19 Hongmeng source crystals emitted a dazzling light and steadily entered his line of sight. Macaque couldn't help but blush as he tossed the storage ring over. Thank you. Lin Feng caught the storage ring. Within the vast space, 150 great source spirit fruits lay quietly. They contained abundant source spirit energy, which made Lin Feng heave a sigh of relief. This batch of great source spirit fruits could be said to be timely help. It was like an army that had run out of provisions had received sufficient reinforcements. Lin Feng's suspended heart finally relaxed. With this batch of great origin soul fruits, he no longer needed to fear the great Ian god, even if he encountered him now. He now had enough ammunition. In addition to the great origin soul fruit, there was also a silver, intricate instrument in the storage space. It was a long and wide palm and was quite complicated. Lin Feng was slightly surprised and curiously took it out. It's a communicator. As long as you are in the Taichu universe, anywhere with Hongmeng energy, you can use it, Macaque said with a smile. My contact information is already stored inside. If you need it next time, remember to look for me, brother. He could use it with Hongmeng energy? Lin Feng was surprised. The Taichu's advanced technology in the chaotic universe was quite convenient. Will I expose my position if I use it? Lin Feng asked. Macaque scratched his head. I don't know, but as long as it's in a closed state, there won't be any impact. Lin Feng nodded. He had to be careful. It was impossible for Universe 7's Inquisition to know that he had a communicator. Even if they knew, it was impossible for them to find him through it. As for Taichu cultivators, he only knew Macaque. Okay, I'll contact you if I need it. With a communicator, it would undoubtedly be much more convenient. If it was inconvenient for him to leave, he could contact Macaque to buy whatever he needed. Although it would cost him some Hongmeng energy crystals, it was just a small matter. Having a stable source of treasures was the most important thing. After all, even Lin Feng didn't know how long he would stay here. The battle with Universe 7's Inquisition had just begun. After saying goodbye to Macaque, Lin Feng set off again. It was not Lin Feng's intention to retreat from the depths of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb. If he had the ability, Lin Feng still hoped to fight for some treasures, even if it was just a glimpse. After all, this kind of heart-wrenching feeling was too rare. Lin Feng didn't ask how Macaque came back and forth so quickly. Who didn't have a little secret? If Macaque didn't say, there was no need to ask. He just needed to get what he needed. The rest was not important. With these 150 great origin soul fruits, I can earn at least 10 times the amount of Hongmeng energy crystals. Lin Feng was still very confident in his own strength, especially the combination of the Source Sea and the City of Will, which had always been successful. Actually, I should have asked Macaque to bring an Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure. Lin Feng didn't think so much at the time. Moreover, there were only 20 Hongmeng energy crystals in total. Compared to the great Origin Soul fruits, the Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure was not so important. One was timely help, while the other was just icing on the cake. Whether it was the City of Will or the Fifth Heaven of Fallen Star, they could both break the Soul Defense type Peak Chaos treasure. When the two were combined, they could even break the Soul Defense type Peak Chaos treasure. An additional Peak Chaos treasure would only increase the power of the Origin Sea Impact type Peak Chaos treasure. In comparison, a Peak Chaos treasure that improves the control of the Origin Sea should be more important, right? Lin Feng smiled. There were too many treasures he wanted to buy, but at the moment, his pockets were empty. 1,000 pieces of gold will come back. The core area of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb is very lively now. Following the fluctuations of the earthquake's source and the call of his heart, Lin Feng sped forward, his blood boiling. This time, he could fight to his heart's content. Chapter 28:01. It's getting stronger. As he got closer to the epicenter, even the solid remnant was shaking, as if a monster was about to break out of the ground. It wasn't just the epicenter. Even the call in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. It's real. Lin Feng really felt it. It came from the entire 100 Million Lin Tomb. Every cell in his body was excited. It wasn't because of the great battle that was about to happen, but because of an unknown feeling of joy and a change in his heart. This time, Lin Feng was sure. It was the unprecedented call of the treasure that was about to be unearthed. Silver Eye Realm, Golden Eye Realm. Lin Feng tried to ask my heir, but there didn't seem to be such a realm. Even the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe's mind cultivators hadn't seen such a realm before. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't 100% sure. After all, Meyer probably didn't know much. However, the moment he appeared, the 100 million Lewin tomb shook violently, and the treasure was unearthed. If this was a coincidence, then there were too many coincidences. With so many coincidences mixed together, Lin Feng knew very well that although there were real coincidences, the possibility was very small. Instead, there was a mysterious force pushing. The source of that force was the epicenter, the core area of the 100 million Lin tomb. Lin Feng couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Even if the treasure was unearthed because of him, given his current strength, he simply wasn't qualified to compete for it. Although Lin Feng was confident, he wasn't conceited. If he was the primordial chaos supreme god today, his internal universe wouldn't be at a disadvantage, and he could perfectly control the primordial chaos supreme treasure, the Phantom Spider Hand. He would be able to fight against a group of Taichu cultivators. However, he was only good at one-on-one battles now. The Sorcery attack could kill one, but what about 2 or 3? In a chaotic battle, the threat of the Sorcery attack would be greatly reduced. The number of powerhouses gathered in the core area of the 100 million Lun tomb was unimaginable, and every one of them was a top-notch Yuan Venerate powerhouse. It was fine to join the fun, but Lin Feng admitted that he didn't have the ability to fight for the treasure and become the target of public criticism. At least, he didn't have the ability now. Although it was a bit of a pity, it was very likely that this was a top-grade treasure that was extremely suitable for him. But that was all he could do. There's a high chance that the treasures in the 100 million cycles origin world are treasures that belong to cultivators of the heart. I already have the Qin Emperor's origin heart, so I don't really need much of it. Lin Feng continued forward calmly. Now that he had sufficient great origin soul fruits in his possession, there was no need for him to continue hiding. Along the way, he had killed and defeated quite a number of experts. Previously, Lin Feng had let them go because he didn't have any ammunition. Now, Lin Feng naturally wouldn't hold back. At the very least, they had to earn back their investment in homing spirit stones. At that time, if I can kill 1 or 2 gods of eternity in the melee, then I'll have made a profit. Universe 7's adjudicator of God considered Lin Feng as prey, but wasn't Lin Feng the same now? Lin Feng was never a soft-hearted person. He was not a man who did not take revenge. Furthermore, offense was the best defense. Blindly hiding like Senior Yellow Spring was definitely not the best way to go about it. It would only encourage the arrogance of Universe 7's adjudicator of God and make them even more unscrupulous. The gods of eternity were also living beings with their own thoughts. They weren't puppets of the will of the Great Path. Once they were hesitant, fearful, or even fearful, the situation would be very different. He wouldn't just sit and wait for death. He would take the initiative to attack. Fate is in your own hands. Lin Feng didn't hesitate to launch an attack when his peak-grade chaotic ultimate treasure, Seamless, found a peak Yuan Venerate. The impact of his source C blasted like a huge wave, and the City of Intent smashed his soul defense treasure to pieces with a loud boom. That peak Yuan Venerate of the demon race didn't even have time to react before he died. He didn't even know what had happened until he died. This is a cultivator from the first sub-universe. After spending a long time in the 100 million Lewin origin realms, Lin Feng had also discovered many patterns. Although the Taichu origin chaotic universe had 18 sub-universes, the most common ones he saw were the Taichu cultivators, followed by the cultivators from the first, second, and third sub-universes. The number of cultivators in the fourth sub-universe had decreased significantly. The number of cultivators in the seventh sub-universe was even fewer than in the 10th and 13th sub-universes. The dragon has 9 suns, but each sun is different. Lin Feng also understood. Different sub-universes were good at different things. The first, second, and third sub-universes might be relatively perfect. Although they weren't as perfect as the Taichu origin chaotic universe, they only had a few flaws. The other sub-universes were different. For example, the 5th sub-universe had a huge flaw in the power sky law. The 6th sub-universe had a broken energy sky law, and the 9th sub-universe had thin space and time sky laws. The 7th sub-universe has perfect time, space, energy, and power sky laws. However, the soul sky law is flawed, and the heart force sky law is completely absent. Heart force was more manifested on the level of willpower. If one's heart force was weak, their willpower would often be weak. Furthermore, the flaw in the soul sky law made it impossible for Yuan venerates in the seventh subuniverse to transform their origin souls. Furthermore, the imperfections in these two aspects made their internal universe imperfect as well, making it much more difficult for them to become almighties. I am an exception. Lin Feng couldn't help but smile as he put away the treasure of the demon race Yuan venerate in the first subuniverse. His origin soul was strong, and his willpower was even stronger. This was the complete opposite of the cultivators in the seventh subuniverse. If he didn't say it, no one would guess that he was a cultivator from the seventh subuniverse. Could it be that I'm not from the seventh subuniverse? Lin Feng smiled. After all, he was a native of Earth. 100 million Lingrave. In addition to Shang Jin, another great Ian god had also entered with this wave of powerhouses. It was great Ian god Conwell. He had always been a subordinate of the Grand Eternity God. Later, he had been lent to the Grand Eternity God Shang Jin. After the Golden Arrow Grand Eternity God had been killed by Lin Feng and the Three-Eyed Grand Eternity God had been severely injured, only the Grand Eternity God Void Dance was left. After informing Eternal God Eternity to come, Great Ian God Kongwu naturally returned to Eternal God Eternity's side to guard the Golden Eye reincarnation. However, as more and more powerhouses entered the Golden Eye reincarnation, Eternal God Shungjin's divine power was running out and he needed reinforcements. After all, this wasn't the origin universe, and there wasn't the will of the sky. Thus, Eternal God Shungjin's strength was only comparable to an intermediate almighty among ordinary almighties. Apart from Three-Eyed, the rest of the 6 great Ian gods under Eternal God Eternity had all arrived. However, only Eternal God Kongwu could pass the Golden Eye reincarnation. Passing the Golden Eye reincarnation required the willpower of an almighty. The willpower of cultivators in the 7th subuniverse was often not strong enough, even for eternal gods who had cultivated for countless eras. Eternal God Kongwu could pass because he was one of the few Yuan venerates in the 7th subuniverse, Demon Heart. Chapter 28:02. My lord is right. Shang Jin is really useless. As a subordinate of the Eternal Eternity God, the Dancing Eternity God naturally disdained Shang Jin. In his opinion, the 6 paths of samsara were much stronger than the divine judgment ground. During the Yellow Springs incident last time, the God Judgment Continent was also in a state of chaos. This time it was the same. Time and time again, I've been toyed with by a little sovereign. What a disgrace to the master Ian God. Is he even worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as the Eternal Eternity God? The Dancing Eternity God was wearing a black robe as he sped through the 100 million wheel tomb. His arrogant expression was filled with a cold and disdainful smile. Strands of bright light shot out from his eyes, full of ambition. If I meet Lin Feng, I can kill him in a few moves. Source C Impact? How dare he show off this in front of me? He is simply overestimating himself. The Dancing Eternity God was naturally extraordinary. He had been famous for a long time and wasn't inferior to the Three-Eyed Eternity God. However, as Yuan venerate Demon Heart, he wasn't good at group battles and wasn't very famous. Still, his Demon Heart impact could be considered unique in the divine judgment ground of Universe 7. Ultimate secret technique, Demon Sword Dance. Ultimate chaos treasure for obliterating wheelbanes. With these 2 traits, Grand Ian God Void Dance could be said to be famous in the child universe. His battle prowess was extraordinary. Thus, Grand Ian God Void Dance was one of the 3 Grand Ian gods that Grand Ian God Eternal God Void Dance had borrowed. The outcome of an internal battle between Yuan venerates with one thought was rather straightforward. Source C and Source Soul were both strong. Thump! The Dancing Eternity God's heart skipped a beat when he suddenly sensed Huang Zun's aura not far ahead. This made him very excited. It was him. It had to be him. Who else could run into Huang Zun in the 100 million wheel tomb? This credit belongs to me, dancing eternity god. Although the dancing eternity god didn't belong to the divine judgment ground, he still knew a lot of things. Killing Lin Feng was the will of the sky. No matter who could kill Lin Feng, it would be a great contribution. In the primal universe, the reward from the heavenly Tao was comparable to a Hongmeng source item or even stronger. Qi, like a sharp arrow, the demon heart of the dancing universe god was flawless. This was the origin soul of the demon race. Few people knew that the strongest Yuan venerate in the seventh origin universe was the dancing universe god. Aren't you most proficient in origin C attacks? Then let's see whose is stronger. Grand Eternity God Kongwu was extremely proud of himself. He didn't believe that he would lose to a mere human like Huang Zun in his area of expertise. When it came to the heavenly Tao of the soul, no cultivator in the original universe could compare to him, including Lin Feng. Devil Sword Dance. The moment he sensed Lin Feng, Eternal God Kongwu directly used his Source Soul attack. Those who were good at offense weren't necessarily good at defense. Eternal God Kongwu was actually somewhat afraid of Lin Feng, even if he wasn't willing to admit it. Therefore, he chose to take the initiative to attack. Ordinarily, Eternal God Kongwu wouldn't have taken such a risk. After all, there would be a backlash if his Source Soul attack failed. Even if he won, he would still suffer considerable losses. However, his opponent this time wasn't ordinary. If he used illusion techniques or controlled object to attack, then he wouldn't be the one taking the initiative to attack. Compared to his Source Soul defense, Eternal God Kongwu was more confident in his Source Soul attack. Fecta, Termination. This secret technique, combined with the origin soul attack of the supreme chaos ultimate treasure, the four vanishing wheel banes, broke through Lin Feng's soul defense treasure in an instant. Lin Feng was indeed not strong in this aspect. In the past, the strength of his soul defense had come from the 10,000 origin mustard stone. However, the 10,000 origin mustard stone had fused with the origin C and its grade was limited. Can't even withstand a single blow. Eternal God Kongwu sneered as the wrinkles on his face twitched. Once the opponent's soul defense treasure was broken, the success rate of his Source Soul attack would be more than 80%. The four vanishing wheel banes only used the second bane to firmly gain the upper hand. However, Eternal God Kongwu's expression changed in an instant. What is that? Where the origin spirit attack landed, a huge city stood in the air above the vast origin sea. It was like a city in the sky, and a powerful force protected the origin sea, making it impenetrable. There was still a soul defense treasure among soul defense treasures. Eternal God Kongwu was a little dazed. He had never heard of such a thing. However, he gritted his teeth and concentrated his Source Soul attack on the four vanishing wheel banes. Meng Jun Termination. The power of the third bane was much greater than the second bane. Eternal God Kongwu went all out. Since he had already attacked, he naturally wouldn't retreat. However, the city in the sky was indestructible. It was impregnable despite the attacks of the supreme chaos ultimate treasure. City of Will. This was Lin Feng's true soul defense treasure. The strength of a mind cultivator was very comprehensive. Not only did they have the offensive and defensive means of a Yuan venerate, but they also had the defense of their Source Heart Force. Driven by perfect Source Heart Force, the City of Will was unshakable. I've been waiting for you for a long time. The soul defense treasure was just one of Lin Feng's traps. In an instant, the universe in Lin Feng's body erupted with a loud bang, completely suppressing Lin Feng. In terms of internal universe, Lin Feng was already a level stronger. Now, he was even more suppressed. How can his internal universe be so strong? Eternal God Kongwu turned pale with fright. The Source Soul attack he was so proud of collided with Lin Feng's origin sea, but was blocked by the immovable city in the sky. In an instant, the energy of the endless origin sea collided head-on. Damn it! Eternal God Kongwu's advantage immediately turned into a disadvantage. He was like a sharp arrow that pierced his demon heart. It was difficult for him to advance or retreat. Eternal God Kongwu was also decisive. Since his main attack failed, he immediately retreated to preserve his strength. It's too late. Lin Feng controlled the City of Will and smashed it directly at Eternal God Kongwu's demon heart. Boom! Eternal God Kongwu's face turned pale as his head buzzed. Go! Fallen Star 5th layer heaven blasted out. The moment Eternal God Kongwu's will was damaged, his soul defense was shattered. The City of Will once again smashed into Eternal God Kongwu's origin sea. Lin Feng's eyes were bright as he attacked with all his strength. Boom! 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 It was the same secret technique, but Lin Feng was stronger. Under normal circumstances, Eternal God Kongwu could block Lin Feng's Source Soul attack. After all, his demon heart was also very strong, and his internal universe was only slightly inferior to Lin Feng's. But now, his demon heart had suffered a backlash and his willpower had been greatly damaged. He could only display 20% of his strength. Under Lin Feng's unstoppable attacks, Eternal God Kongwu's demon heart suffered a crushing defeat. His twisted face was filled with unwillingness as his mournful roar resounded through the 100-million-wheel grave. My lord will avenge me. Eternal God Kongwu roared with a fierce expression. His voice grew weaker and weaker until there was no more color in his eyes. He fell to the ground and died on the spot. Revenge. I'll be waiting. Lin Feng put away Eternal God Kongwu's treasures. His eyes flashed and his figure disappeared. Genius remembered this address in 1 second. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2803. Kongwu was killed by Lin Feng. The Eternal God's body shook. He had received a message from the Eternal God Kongwu before her death. The Eternal God, who was already at the epicenter of the epicenter, felt his vision go dark. He could sense the Eternal God Kongwu's position at the center of the 100-million-wheel tomb. There was still a large distance between them and the epicenter of the epicenter. Lin Feng, the Eternal God, clenched his fists, making cracking sounds. He was furious. He had thought that Lin Feng would be at the epicenter of the epicenter and would be able to find Lin Feng here. Who would have thought that Lin Feng would do the opposite and not come here at all? There was clearly a treasure being unearthed, but Lin Feng was ignoring it. What kind of person was this? He had come here for nothing. The Eternal God was in a dilemma. He had come here with great difficulty, and the treasure was about to be unearthed. Was he going to leave just like that? However, he had entered the 100-million-wheel tomb for Lin Feng. Now that he knew that Lin Feng was outside, was he going to ignore him? Damn it, bastard. The Eternal God was so angry that his entire body trembled. He felt like a cow that was being led by the nose. He was extremely unhappy. Sheng Jin. A thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Sheng Jin was shocked and immediately calmed down. He was very familiar with this voice. It was his good brother, the Eternal God. Eternal, Kongwu is dead, the Eternal God said. I know. The Eternal God's voice was as calm as ever, without any emotion. It was as if the one who had died wasn't one of his subordinates, but an ordinary person. You stay here, the Eternal God said calmly. I'll come in. The Eternal God's eyes lit up when he heard this. He revealed a look of surprise. Okay. He almost blurted it out. The Eternal God naturally hoped that the Eternal God could intervene and help, but he couldn't bring himself to ask. Now that the Eternal God had taken the initiative to help, it couldn't be better. Sheng Jin, you are too useless. A familiar voice sounded out once more. Sheng Jin's old face paled. He wanted to retort, but he didn't know how to. He simply humphed and didn't say anything else. If he was mocked, then so be it. In any case, it wasn't the first time he had been mocked by the Eternal God of Eternity. Furthermore, he had caused 2 of the Eternal Ian God's 3 generals to die and 1 to be injured. The Eternal Ian God also felt guilty. This time we'll definitely succeed. The Eternal Eternity God was willing to take action. With their combined strength, they would definitely be able to kill Lin Feng in the 100-million-wheel tomb. Perhaps he could even get a share of the treasures that were unearthed. In the 100-million-wheel tomb, Lin Feng was fiddling with the Grand Eternity God's treasure as he sped along. Suddenly, his eyes lit up, and a satisfied smile appeared at the corner of Lin Feng's mouth. Light flashed in his hand, and a black and red drum-shaped treasure appeared. Ultimate Chaos Treasure. Lin Feng had already sensed it when Grand Eternity God Kongwu had used her Origin Soul attack. Now, he was sure that it was true. Great! Lin Feng was delighted. In the previous battle, rather than saying that Grand Eternity God Kongwu had used her Origin Soul attack, it was more accurate to say that Lin Feng had lured her into using it. In the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, Lin Feng had fought with many First Thought Yuan Venerates who weren't inferior to Grand Eternity God Kongwu. He had been able to defeat his opponents, but he had never been able to kill them. It was too difficult to kill a First Thought Yuan Venerate by using the Origin C's Origin Soul attack. The only chance was to injure a First Thought Yuan Venerate's Origin Soul, and then take them down in one go. Lin Feng wouldn't have dared to do this before the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart had awakened. Just as Grand Eternity God Kongwu had said, those who were good at offense might not be good at defense. Lin Feng was indeed not good at defense. His internal universe wasn't strong, his soul defensive treasures were very ordinary, and his Origin C wasn't perfect. However, the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart had awakened, and he possessed perfect Origin Heart force to control the City of Will. The Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was a top-notch primal chaos treasure. Lin Feng still couldn't fully utilize its offensive capabilities. However, the grade of the Qin Emperor's Origin Heart was already there. As long as he possessed perfect Origin Heart force, he could utilize 100% of its defensive capabilities. Lin Feng had dared to take such a risk because he had the City of Will to protect it. The outcome was just as Lin Feng had expected. The last brick has been assembled. Lin Feng used his all-encompassing ability to refine this primal chaos treasure. Although it would take a lot of time, he would be like a tiger that had grown wings once the refinement was completed. This was a primal chaos treasure that could impact one's Origin Soul. In the core region of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, the vibrations were extremely violent and would appear every once in a while. Furthermore, they were becoming more and more frequent. The signs of the treasure being unearthed were becoming clearer and clearer, and many cultivators couldn't wait any longer. Layers of ripples appeared on the constantly expanding halo that flickered brightly and contained a powerful aura that seemed to be luring cultivators in. However, no cultivator would do this except for the newly arrived peak Yuan Venerates. After all the cultivators who had done so had died. Once they came into contact with the white halo, they would instantly feel as though they had been electrocuted. Their auras would be extinguished in an instant, and they would die on the spot. A few peak Yuan Venerates who didn't believe in heresy tried to force their way in, but the outcome was exactly the same. After that, the cultivators didn't dare take the risk anymore. Treasures were important, but their lives were more important. Serves them right. The Heavenly Monarch has already said that there is danger, yet they still want to approach. Exactly. Wouldn't it be fine if we just listened to the Heavenly Monarch? Who here is more experienced than the Heavenly Monarch? Be more humble. All of them are blinded by greed. Why don't you think about your own worth? Do you think you're worthy of the treasure? Haha, we're just here to join the fun. How can we have a share when Black Shadow, Green Hammer, and the Heavenly Monarch are around? It's better to stay away if you don't have the strength. Even if you get the treasure, you won't be able to protect it and will pay with your life instead. The Heavenly Monarch that the Yuan Venerate powerhouses were talking about was Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu. He was rather prestigious among the Taichu cultivators and had a natural leadership temperament. His tyrannical strength had subdued many Yuan Venerates powerhouses. However, Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu wasn't the strongest person in the 100 Million Wheel Burial Mound. Black Shadow and Great King Green Hammer weren't any weaker than Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu, especially Black Shadow, who always acted alone. He didn't have a group of subordinates like Great King Green Hammer, nor did he have an entourage like Heavenly Monarch Zhao Wu. His strength was unfathomable, a tripartite balance of power. Zhu Ying, Great King Cyan Hammer, and Heavenly King Zhao Xian were the publicly acknowledged three great experts in 100 Million Wheel Mound. They had never tasted defeat, and none of them were weaker than the other. However, there were no records of them fighting against each other, so it was unknown who was stronger. However, there was no doubt that the three of them were the most qualified and had the opportunity to obtain the treasures. However, at this moment, there was another force that could not be underestimated that was slowly approaching the core of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, the elite team of the 13th Army. They were led by Captain Wu Zong, and the 9 members under him were all comparable to ordinary almighties. The arrival of this team would undoubtedly cause the fight for the treasures in the core area to become even more intense and confusing. However, like Xingjin and Eternity God, their real target wasn't the treasures that were about to be unearthed. Instead, it was Lin Feng. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2804. Boom. The phantom spider hand turned into a streak of black light and entered Lin Feng's hand. Although he couldn't kill the enemy, Lin Feng was rather satisfied that he could repel the enemy. This was a common method of combat for first-thought Yuan venerates who were controlling objects. It wasn't like using the Source C, where he had to risk his life every time. I've almost grasped the second level of the Phantom Spider Hand, Coiling Silk Layered Shadow. Every attack was a form of practice and comprehension. Combat was the fastest way to improve one's strength. Although Lin Feng hadn't been controlling the Phantom Spider Hand for long, his improvement was remarkable. The second level of Coiling Silk Layered Shadow requires a control of 30 times perfect Source Soul power to execute. Not only can I execute it, but I can also execute it freely. It's just that I haven't mastered the control of the treasure yet. Lin Feng's control of perfect Source Soul power naturally wasn't 30 times. To be exact, it was only 10 times. Lin Feng didn't know exactly how much. After all, he hadn't tested it accurately. However, he was still far from 30 times. Lin Feng was well aware of this. Executing the second level of Coiling Silk Layered Shadow didn't rely on his perfect Source Soul power, but his perfect Source Heart power. Using the perfect Source Heart power as the source to drive the perfect Source Soul power and control the Coiling Silk Layered Shadow wasn't just easier to control. It was also stronger than the normal Coiling Silk Layered Shadow because it was integrated with the City of Will, Smash. This was the ability of a mind cultivator. It was impossible to execute the Coiling Silk Layered Shadow by relying on perfect Source Heart power alone. Lin Feng wasn't strong enough by relying on perfect Source Soul power alone. However, the combination of the two made Lin Feng feel like a fish in water. What I lack is my internal universe. In the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, Lin Feng had often defeated peak Yuan venerates in sub-universes. The strength of his internal universe had become the benchmark. If his internal universe was stronger than his opponents, he could win if the Phantom Spider Hand could unleash its power. If his internal universe was even, it would depend on luck. If his internal universe was suppressed by his opponent, he could only use the Source C attack. The power of the Phantom Spider Hand was unquestionable. Although Lin Feng had only comprehended a small amount, when combined with the City of Will, Smash, it was comparable to a peak Yuan venerate using a chaotic ultimate treasure. However, the improvement of one's internal universe wasn't something that could be done overnight. Furthermore, Lin Feng was already at the pinnacle of Huangzun. His internal universe was also improving at an extreme speed. It was just that he had yet to reach the level of perfection of Huangzun. The peak Yuan venerates in the 100 Million Wheel Tomb are almost all the best among the Yuan venerates in the Sea and Hongming. Many of them are comparable to the threshold of an almighty. If I break through to become a godly venerate, I will be comparable to them. Using battle to nurture battle, without Universe 7's godly inquisition pressuring him step by step, it would have been impossible for Lin Feng to advance so quickly. I'm getting close. Lin Feng felt the violent tremors, each stronger than the previous one, and the frequency was also faster than the previous one. It was as if it was very anxious and impatient to break out of the ground, but it was still forcefully suppressing it. Are you waiting for me? Lin Feng smiled casually. He seemed to be fated with this treasure. He had stopped in the 100 million wheel tomb for so long, but it hadn't appeared. He had thought that he wouldn't have a chance to obtain it. Unexpectedly, he discovered that the opportunity was still there. I haven't seen Eternal God, Shang Jin, yet. I wonder where he is now. Although Lin Feng had been defeated in the previous battle with Eternal God Shang Jin, he had already figured out Eternal God Shang Jin's background and was confident now. Even if he couldn't kill Eternal God Shang Jin, he could at least make him return and defeat. However, Lin Feng knew that defeating Eternal God Shang Jin didn't mean anything. Senior Yellow Spring had also defeated Eternal God Shang Jin in the Hongmeng Sea, but what followed was a calamity. His teacher, Patriarch Taiqiong, the founder of the 30,000 realms of space, Heavenly Dharch Aokong, and Ancestor Qing of the Murdering God Tower had all attacked Senior Yellow Spring at the same time and severely injured him. If I defeat Eternal God Shang Jin, what awaits me next should be the arrival of an Almighty. Lin Feng smiled and said calmly, then I'll just stay in a 100 million wheel tomb and not go out. Almighties couldn't enter the 100 million wheel tomb. However, Lin Feng knew that this was only for Almighties. For the real, transcendent beings in the Hongmeng Sea, the restriction of the 100 million wheel master was just something that could be easily erased. There was always a higher mountain. Why did the 100 million wheel master die? There must be someone stronger than him. Just like the death of Venerable Wan Yuan, Ancestor Wan Qian, and the black-haired giant engraved in the memories deep in his bloodline. There was always someone better than you. I'm here. Lin Feng's expression gradually turned solemn. The region in front of him gave him a deep sense of pressure. There were numerous black eyes in the air. Some were open, and some were half closed. The sky was filled with black eyes, making it hard for people to breathe. The core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. These black eyes were different from the silver and golden eyes. They had strong murderous intent and were hostile to every cultivator they saw. Pong! Lin Feng's mind was shaken, and he saw a black pupil shooting out a ray of light. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in front of him, holding a serrated blade in his hand, and rushed over with a murderous aura. Illusion? No, this was a willpower attack. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, they exchanged hundreds of blows. When the black shadow was killed, Lin Feng woke up and let out a long breath. Impressive. It was like an illusion, but it was real. If one's willpower wasn't strong enough, they would fall into endless slaughter. If one wasn't strong enough, they would be killed by the black shadow's fierce attacks. Oh! Lin Feng looked up. At this moment, the murderous intent in one of the black eyes had disappeared. It seemed that he could enter, but the other black eyes were still murderous. Lin Feng thought, but he didn't enter. This wasn't the direction of the epicenter, and the 100 million wheel tomb was full of dangers and restrictions. Without confidence, Lin Feng didn't want to barge in. So, when he stepped into the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb, the pressure was extremely heavy. The entire space was like an internal universe. If the internal universe was slightly weaker, it would collapse under the pressure. There were tens of thousands of black eyes around, just like the black eyes outside. Countless gazes were focused on him, making him shudder. The owner of the 100 million wheel tomb must be a very strong mental cultivator. Even though he had fallen for countless eras, the pressure of his internal universe was still so shocking. In the dark void, there were many spots of light. The deeper they went, the stronger the calling became. There were many cultivators in the surroundings. After entering this core area, it was no longer strange to see other cultivators. However, when they looked at Lin Feng, they were surprised and surprised. In the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb, Huangzun's entry was undoubtedly eye-catching. These black eyes alone weren't something an ordinary Yuan venerate could resist, let alone Huangzun. Lin Feng. A furious roar resounded in the silent void. Among the powerhouses in the sky, a huge metal figure rushed out like a steel castle. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2805. The newcomer was Shang Jin Great Ian God. He had been waiting for Lin Feng for a long time and had thought that he wouldn't have the chance to personally kill Lin Feng. He had never imagined that Lin Feng would actually appear before him once again, which made Shang Jin, Great Ian God, very excited. This time, he wouldn't give Lin Feng any chance to escape. Crack! A black talisman flashed in Shang Jin, Great Ian God's hand. The lines on the talisman looked extremely strange, but they emitted a strange energy. As the talisman flashed, two black lights turned into arcs of light that surrounded Shang Jin, Great Ian God, and Lin Feng in an oval circle. Z, Z, Z. Black lights flickered and killing intent spread. Oh, Death Battle Talisman. The Death Battle Talisman of the first sub-universe. This is very rare. Looks like there is an irreconcilable enmity between them. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to part with this Death Battle Talisman. The surrounding Peak Yuan venerates weren't ordinary people, so they could see through Shang Jin, Great Ian God's treasure at a glance. Although it was only a talisman, the price of the Death Battle Talisman was high and comparable to a supreme, chaotic treasure. Once used, the seal would only be lifted if the other party died. This was called the Death Battle Talisman. Not only that, it was extremely dangerous to engage in a life-and-death battle under the watchful eyes of so many people. Even if you could kill your opponent, once you were seriously injured, the surrounding cultivators would be happy to reap the benefits and take advantage of the situation. Shang Jin, Great Ian God, wasn't impulsive. Even though Lin Feng had escaped several times, he was still very calm. He naturally knew that using the Death Battle Talisman was very dangerous, and fighting here was even more dangerous. However, Shang Jin, Great Ian God, had absolute confidence in his own strength. Not long ago, he had been unscathed in his battle with Lin Feng. Lin Feng's attacks simply weren't enough to break through his defenses. However, Lin Feng's life-saving methods gave him a headache. He always managed to escape with his life and hide, well, every time. No one could find him no matter how hard they tried. Furthermore, Shang Jin, Great Ian God, believed that even if he unfortunately died here, it would be a great contribution if he could kill Lin Feng. When the time came, his good brother would find a way to revive him. Almighties were very strong, but once an almighty died, they could not be revived. Peak Yuan venerates could be revived as long as they paid a high enough price to invite a universe ruler to reverse time and space. This time, you have nowhere to run. Shang Jin, Great Ian God, was like a god of war. He raised his head high, and his huge body gave off a powerful pressure. His combat strength was comparable to that of a middle almighty. Although he wasn't the strongest in the core region of the 100 million wheel tomb, he was still considered decent. I didn't even think of escaping. Lin Feng's indifferent voice inexplicably caused Shang Jin's heart to tighten. A feeling of uneasiness rose in his heart, and in an instant, there was a loud bang in his head as the familiar impact of the Genesis C pressed down on him. Shang Jin, Great Ian God, wasn't surprised at all when he saw the exact same attack method. Last time, he was able to withstand it perfectly. Naturally, he would be able to do the same this time. No driving mountain. Endless towering mountains appeared, perfectly matching the power of Shang Jin God. This Supreme Chaos True Treasure was one of the 3 Supreme Chaos True Treasures on Shang Jin God's body. Shang Jin, Great Ian God, was the embodiment of the universe Shang Jin, and defense was his strongest technique. First, he would defend against the opponent's attack, and then slowly grind them to death. This was the most commonly used technique of Shang Jin, Great Ian God. Boom! The same Genesis C impact had a completely different power. It was a towering city comparable to the size of Buyu Mountain. It was condensed with perfect source core force and smashed into Buyu Mountain, causing the earth and mountains to shake. What? Shang Jin, Great Ian God's face stiffened. This was the first time his source soul had been shaken ever since he had merged with Buyu Mountain. The powerful defense of Buyu Mountain had never disappointed him. No matter how strong his opponent's source soul was, he could easily withstand it. However, this time, boom, boom, boom. The towering giant city continued to smash into unyielding mountain. Lin Feng's Origin C attacks were like overlapping waves hidden within the giant city. Every time the giant city smashed into unyielding mountain, It contained an astonishing amount of perfect origin soul force. Like a falling star, the perfect source soul force and perfect source core force combined seamlessly and sublimated their power. Break! Surrounded by the black light of the death battle talisman, Lin Feng erupted with his peak fighting spirit. The combination of the power source sacred fruit, the myriad drawing polarity source, the fifth layer of fallen stars, and the city of wool produced a tremendous power. The fifth attack shattered Shengjin Great Ian God Supreme, Chaos Treasure Defense. No! Shengjin Great Ian God was hysterical, his heart filled with fear. When the endless source sea energy poured in, Shengjin Great Ian God's first reaction was to flee. He knew how terrifying the source sea impact was, especially the opponent in front of him, who had once killed all his great Ian gods by relying on the source sea impact. Death flag. In an instant, a huge flag with strange patterns fluttered above Shengjin Great Ian God. As the stars gathered, the patterns on the flag became particularly clear. Another supreme treasure of the chaos. Death flag. TSK TSK. This is a good life-saving treasure. Seems like the outcome has been decided. So fast. That Huang Zun human used the source sea impact. The outcome was decided in an instant. Both the source sea impact and the source soul impact happened in an instant. The surrounding Peak Yuan venerates didn't mind watching the show. Although they were surprised that a human like Huang Zun could force a Peak Yuan venerate to use the death flag to save his life, they weren't too surprised. After all, this was a common occurrence in the Taichu Origin Chaos universe. Even the top Taichu Huang Zun, little red saber Rue E, had killed Almighties before. He's too stupid. He used the Death Battle Talisman first before using the Death Battle Flag. How could it be effective? It's too late to remove it. The source C impact is too short, and he has to divert his attention to remove the Death Battle Talisman. He's finished. One idiot. The Peak Yuan venerate sneered. Shengjin Great Ian God was also stunned. He had completely forgotten about using the Death Battle Talisman and had only thought of using the Death Battle Flag at the critical moment. However, it was already too late. He had dug a hole and buried himself. No, this was the fear in the depths of his sore soul. Too many scenes surfaced in the mind of Shengjin Great Ian God, who had presided over the divine judgment ground for countless eras and was almost invincible in the Origin universe. He was Universe Shengjin. He had unique talents and was favored by the will of the heavenly great path. He enjoyed all kinds of luxuries and possessed great power at the level of the universe. However, he would never be able to become an almighty and control his own destiny. He regretted it. He was unwilling. Revive me, brother. Shengjin Great Ian God's last thought was filled with hatred. His source soul was distorted and ferocious before it was completely annihilated by Lin Feng's boundless source sea energy. The Death Battle Talisman flickered with black light and murderous intent. This was the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, the tomb of the 100 Million Wheel Master and Shengjin Great Ian God. Chapter 28:06. Shengjin, you are too useless. Within the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, the eternal Ian God's robes were still as eye-catching as ever. The holy look on his face didn't change at all. Even the deaths of his brothers for countless epochs didn't cause him to change his expression at all. He had received a message from the eternal Ian God before his death and knew about the eternal Ian God's unwillingness and hatred. But so what? Resurrection? Ha. The huge wheel of time behind the eternal Ian God rotated. His eyes were slightly closed as if he was chanting something. The surrounding time seemed to stop in an instant. Rest in peace, Shengjin. I will avenge you. He opened his eyes expressionlessly. The eternal Ian God wouldn't pay a huge price to resurrect Shengjin because it was meaningless. Where there is life, there is death. Life, reincarnation. Everything is destined. The weak don't have the right to be resurrected. Shengjin, you are too useless. In the core area of the 100 Million Wheel Tomb, Lin Feng was floating in the void as he put away the eternal Ian God's treasure. As the black light of the death battle talisman gradually faded and the space lock was restored, the surrounding people looked extremely unfriendly. Whoosh! Lin Feng's gaze swept over them, his expression indifferent. He knew that these peak Yuan venerates were spying on him, and many of them didn't hide their greed. He had just experienced a fierce battle, and his source had consumed a lot of energy. Although he had the great source soul fruit to recover, this wasn't something that could be recovered in a short time. It would definitely be a disaster for Lin Feng if these peak Yuan venerates swarmed him. He wasn't confident that he could survive. A single Jade Arhut could only block one attack. However, there were too many peak Yuan venerates here. The more dangerous it was, the calmer he had to be. Lin Feng knew very well that if he showed the slightest sign of weakness or fear, a calamity would await him. On the contrary, although he was in front of everyone, the nail that stuck out would be the nail that took the lead. These peak Yuan venerates weren't stupid, and no one was willing to be the first to make a move. All the peak Yuan venerates were watching. Lin Feng's strength was undoubtedly evident in the battle just now. Although it was unknown whether it was a soul source attack or a sourcey attack, being able to instantly kill a peak Yuan venerate who was not weak and possessed many supreme chaotic treasures was enough to show how tyrannical its combat strength was. However, it was precisely because of this that it attracted the attention of others. The eternal god Shungjin had too many supreme chaos treasures. He had a death battle talisman, a soul defensive true treasure, a battle armor, and a death flag that he had already used. Excluding the death battle talisman and the shattered soul defensive true treasure, he still had at least 2 supreme chaos treasures. This included the fact that his weapon had yet to appear. An expert who owned 4 supreme chaos true treasures had to have at least a supreme chaos true treasure level weapon. At the same time, Huang Zun, the human who had killed him, must have possessed a supreme chaos treasure level soul charging treasure. Although the total value of these supreme chaos treasures might not even be 1/10 or 1/100th of the value of the treasure that was about to be unearthed, how could rare treasures be so easily obtained? In comparison, killing a Huang Zun human was undoubtedly much easier. The peak Yuan venerates weren't fools, so they knew what was going on. Furthermore, they knew that a soul source attack and a sourcey attack would consume a lot of energy and couldn't be used continuously. Now, no one wanted to take the lead. Everyone wanted to clean up the mess and take advantage of the situation. Of course, there were also some peak Yuan venerates who disdained to do such a thing. For example, they didn't even look in this direction. Given their strength, doing such a thing was too degrading. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo wouldn't damage his reputation either. He had a high prestige among the Yuan venerates. It wasn't easy to build a reputation, but it was easy to destroy it. True top powerhouses either cherished their reputation or their reputation. Furthermore, their goal was the same, the super treasure of the 100 million wheel tomb. However, even if they didn't do it, there would always be cultivators who would take the risk out of desperation and greed. Whoosh! A silver figure teleported and appeared, causing the surrounding people to sigh. Chi Yuzi, it's actually him. I didn't expect him to actually make a move. Chi Yuzi has an eccentric personality. He's both good and evil. What's so strange about him making a move? It's actually just right. The peak Yuan venerates whispered among themselves. Many of them who had been itching to make a move temporarily withdrew their greed. If Hoing, Great King Greenhammer, and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo represented the first-tier Yuan venerate powerhouses, then Chi Yuzi belonged to the second-tier Yuan venerate powerhouses. There were quite a number of Yuan venerate powerhouses in the second echelon, such as Rolling Blade Disciple, Old Immortal Mingyu, and Yin Yang Demon Hand, who Lin Feng had fought before. There were more than a dozen of them, and their combat strength was comparable to an upper almighty. As for the third-tier Yuan venerate powerhouses like Sacred Gold and Gradient God, there were too many of them. The reason it was said that Chi Yuzi had made a move was because he belonged to the second-tier Yuan venerate powerhouses. He had fame, status, and strength. What would happen if a third-tier Yuan venerate powerhouse made a move and successfully killed Lin Feng? Chaos would ensue. Countless Yuan venerate powerhouses would intervene because they wouldn't be willing to accept this outcome. However, Qi Yuzi's move meant that the third-tier Yuan venerate powerhouses wouldn't have a chance. The three first-tier Yuan venerates definitely wouldn't make a move. The second-tier Yuan venerates were on par with Qi Yuzi in terms of strength. Furthermore, most of them cherished their reputation. Consider yourself unlucky, human. Qi Yuzi laughed heartily as the silver horn on his head emitted a strange glow. The wings on his back also swept through space. Qi Yuzi's attainments in space had already reached the great perfection. Swoosh! Like an arrow of light, it shot straight at Lin Feng. The speed of the attack was so fast that it left everyone flabbergasted. However, Qi Yuzi's body paused strangely in an instant. His expression was distorted as he laughed and cried. In an instant, he emitted a sharp, resounding cry that caused space to shatter. Illusion technique. Gosh, it's an illusion technique. That human's illusion technique is really impressive. All the peak Yuan venerates were alarmed. They were well aware of Qi Yuzi's strength. He was a well-known mental cultivator with a strong willpower. If even such a mental cultivator could fall for an illusion technique, one could imagine how terrifying the illusion technique of this Huangzun human was. The combination of illusion techniques and source spirit attacks was simply invincible. Besieging was useless against illusions. Illusions didn't consume much source spirit power and could be used to attack indiscriminately. Boom! The power was like an explosion. Qi Yuzi's body shook violently as boundless perfect source spirit power emerged and broke free. Clack! Clack! Qi Yuzi gritted his teeth and glared furiously at Lin Feng. There was deep fear in his eyes as he instantly stopped attacking and turned to retreat. The surroundings were dead silent. All the peak Yuan venerates were dumbstruck. This Huangzun human was too strong. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version website. Chapter 2807. Thank you, Lin Feng replied. Remember, kid, you owe me a favor. Qi Yuzi's voice rang in Luo Yunyang's ears, but his figure had already disappeared. In fact, this wasn't a battle, but a play. Lin Feng agreed without hesitation when Qi Yuzi suggested putting on this play. After all, this was like a timely rain. Otherwise, given Lin Feng's illusory cultivation and Qi Yuzi's willpower, how could the situation have turned out this way? Of course, this play couldn't be hidden from powerhouses like Hu Ying and Heavenly King Zhao. However, such existences wouldn't pay attention to Lin Feng, let alone expose him. Lin Feng felt that it was enough to hide from the greedy powerhouses of the third echelon. Previously, he had still been worrying about how to get through this calamity. Although he had killed Xingjin and the great Ian God, the latter had left him with a huge problem. One supreme chaos treasure was still acceptable, but who wouldn't be tempted by 3 or 4 supreme chaos treasures? Even if he was willing to hand over these supreme chaos treasures, the peak Yuan venerates might not let him off. The weaker and more afraid he was, the more they would take advantage of him and act unscrupulously. Lin Feng had a deep understanding of this. The Hongmeng Sea and the universe were the same. The strong preyed on the weak and ruthless. Strength was the most important thing. If one was strong enough, the other powerhouses would naturally be wary of them and wouldn't dare act blindly without thinking. This was a deal with Qi Yuzi. He had saved Luo Yunyang, and Luo Yunyang was on his side. Qi Yuzi had made his intentions clear right from the start. Although he was taking advantage of Luo Yunyang's perilous state, Lin Feng felt that this was a win-win situation. Qi Yuzi, who was in the second echelon, was alone and didn't have any advantage in the competition for the Earth treasures. However, with Luo Yunyang's help, even if they might not be able to compete with the 3 powerhouses of the first echelon, they would at least be able to gain a foothold in the second echelon. This was much more cost-effective than killing Luo Yunyang. Killing Luo Yunyang would always be risky and might not succeed. Even a slight injury to his origin soul would be bad news for a powerhouse like Qi Yuzi, as this would mean that he wouldn't be able to compete for the Earth treasures. Moreover, There were too many cultivators in the surroundings who were waiting to reap the benefits of others' work. Chi Yuzi was very smart. It was easy to work with smart people, since even Chi Yuzi had been defeated by Lin Feng's illusory technique. The other cultivators naturally didn't dare to act presumptuously. Although they really wanted those supreme chaos treasures, they had to look at the right time and the right target. None of the peak Yuan venerates, there were fools. If Chi Yuzi could escape from the illusion, could they? Lin Feng didn't give the other peak Yuan venerates a chance to think. After the battle ended, he dove into the crowd. With this, the entire area immediately quieted down and returned to normal. A set of battle armor, a pair of boxing gloves, a domain-type treasure, and a special treasure. A total of 4 supreme chaos treasures. Lin Feng sighed as he counted his spoils of war. The wealth of sacred gold Great Ian God was comparable to all the Yuan venerate powerhouses he had killed before. That was a supreme chaos treasure. In the Origin universe, his senior brother and the others only had one. Many Yuan venerate powerhouses didn't even have a peak chaos treasure. Now, he had obtained 4 supreme chaos treasures all at once. Besides, apart from the boxing gloves, he could use the battle armor, domain type, and special chaos treasures. As expected of one of the universe gods of universe, Seven's godly tribunal. He's filthy rich. Lin Feng sighed with satisfaction. He wasn't satisfied with the treasures he had obtained, but with the victory he had won. He had accomplished what Senior Yellow Spring hadn't been able to do back then. Although he didn't know if sacred gold Great Ian God would be resurrected in the distant future, he had definitely dealt a heavy blow to Universe 7's godly tribunal and won a comeback. Who's next? Eternal God of Eternity, or the elusive Eternal God of Hope? Apart from the 2 universe gods, Lin Feng didn't care about the others at all. The strongest Kuan Yi, Great Ian God of the godly tribunal, had been killed by him. The strongest 3-eyed, Great Ian God of the Sky Path had been severely injured by him. Back then, he hadn't even had 20% of his current strength. This place is pretty good. Although the other nomological laws are difficult to comprehend, at least my mental cultivation is tyrannical. Most importantly, Almighties can't enter. The natural restrictions of the 100 million wheel tomb prevented Almighties from entering, so Lin Feng wasn't afraid. Almighties were Almighties after all. Even if a peak Yuan venerate's combat strength was comparable to an Almighty's, it was only comparable. The difference in their internal universes alone was like heaven and earth. Outside the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb, a well-trained army was flying at an extremely fast speed. Everywhere they passed, the wind screamed and the crane screamed. Everyone dodged. 11 experts were wearing the same armor, and their auras were tyrannical. This was the elite team of the 13 Corps. Led by Captain Musin, the 9 members were like wolves and tigers. It was easy for them to carry the weak Taib. Along the way, they had killed countless peak Yuan venerates. Whoever was unlucky enough to run into them would be killed mercilessly at the speed of lightning. In the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe, the army had a rather high status. Although it wasn't as high and mighty as the 7th sub-universe, it was still one of the top forces that had nothing to fear. Anyone who got in their way would die. Have you investigated thoroughly? Musin asked coldly. Yes, Captain. According to the information provided by the artificial intelligence, the ones who are qualified to be our competitors are Dark Shadow, Great King Greenhammer, Heavenly Monarch Zhao Qua, and the Sky Swamp Alliance, a member reported from behind. Dark Shadow. Musin frowned. Tens of thousands of years ago, he had fought Dark Shadow and lost. Although he had grown into a commander of the 13 Corps and his strength was comparable to a top almighty, Musin still wasn't confident that he could defeat Dark Shadow. The power hidden in that small body was too terrifying. Everyone who had looked down on him was dead. Great King Greenhammer? Never heard of him. Heavenly Monarch Zhao Qua. This fellow is also here. Musin's voice was low, and the short horn on his brow bone revealed a hint of fear. He wasn't afraid of Great King Greenhammer or Heavenly Monarch Zhao Qua, but of the Sky Swamp Alliance. This was another huge force in the Taichu origin chaotic universe that wasn't inferior to the army system in the slightest. Chinha, have you discovered any humans like Huang Zun who are adept at using the Source Sea in the core region? Tai Yofu asked anxiously. Muzin's eyes lit up when he heard this. This was their true purpose for coming to the 100 million Will tomb. Yes, the member named Chinha lifted his head and said, not long ago, a battle occurred in the core region. The victor was that human who was adept at using the Source Sea. That's him. Tai Yofu was overjoyed. His eyes were filled with hatred. Very good. Muzin nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Obtaining the treasure was just an extra mission. It would be good if he obtained it, but it didn't matter if he didn't. However, capturing Lin Feng was the order of the Taichu general. He had to complete it. Chapter 2808. How should I cooperate with you later? Lin Feng wasn't far from Qi Yuzi. He couldn't see him, but he could easily communicate with him. When the 100 million wheel splendor reaches its peak, all the dark eyes will open and the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb will open. At that time, there's no need to hide our relationship anymore. We can move together, Qi Yuzi said. The 100 million wheel splendor was a halo in the core area that emitted a strange energy. The dark eyes were the black eyes that Lin Feng had seen before he had entered. They were mixed with illusion techniques and willpower attacks. Lin Feng knew a lot about his alliance with Qi Yuzi. He had originally thought that a treasure had been unearthed, but that wasn't the case. The real treasure was in the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. The mystic realm was the realm within the realm of the 100 million wheel master, so the true treasures and secrets of the 100 million wheel master were hidden there. There were endless passageways, endless secrets, and endless treasures. According to limited statistics, the mystic realm in the 100 million wheel tomb had only opened twice. The last time it opened was 573, 96 million epochs ago. No one knew why the mystic realm opened or what was hidden in it. They only knew that the mystic realm was dangerous but also had great opportunities. Any cultivator who came out alive would generally reap some benefits. Treasures unearthed? That was just a rumor that had been passed around. More than 99% of the Yuan Venerate powerhouses here had been born less than 10 million epochs ago. Remember, some of the mystic realms are illusions, but some are real. You have to learn how to distinguish between them. Qi Yuzi added, the reason I chose to work with you is not only because you're also a mental cultivator, but also because your willpower surprised me. A Huang Zun human with a willpower that isn't weaker than mine is too rare. Qi Yuzi couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Lin Feng smiled modestly. One of the advantages of working with Qi Yuzi was that he knew a lot of things. Furthermore, Luo Yinyang's true combat strength was limited, and he couldn't go far by relying on the impact of his Source Sea. Although his illusory attacks and controlling attacks were considered decent among peak Yuan Venerates, they weren't refined here. The peak Yuan Venerates here were too strong. However, the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb was even stronger. The mortality rate was over 99%. The ancient books mentioned that in order to enter the 100 million wheel tomb secret world, one's will has to be at least at the level of an upper-level almighty. Is at least at the level of a pinnacle almighty. Only then will it be safe. Although there are many Yuan Venerate powerhouses here, there are less than 100 whose willpower has reached the level of an upper almighty. However, they're all battle-hardened. It's not impossible for them to make a breakthrough in a life-and-death situation. However, even if they do make a breakthrough and reach the level of an upper almighty, they will still be treading on thin ice in the mystic realm. It will be difficult for them to truly soar. Brother Lin, although your strength is ordinary, you have the advantage of being able to cooperate well with me. Moreover, your will is the same as mine, also at the level of the pinnacle almighty. According to my senses, there are only 12 such cultivators here, including you, Brother Lin. Lin Feng nodded. Qi Yuzi was very honest. However, his strength was indeed ordinary in their eyes. Are you referring to the Black Shadow, Great King Greenhammer, and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo that you mentioned before? Through Qi Yuzi, Lin Feng was very clear about the current fighting strength in the core area. There is also a superpower called the Sky Swamp Alliance, Qi Yuzi said. They hide very well and move separately. I can only be sure that there are two of them. Sky Swamp Alliance, Lin Feng muttered softly. There were many tyrannical forces in the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe that were much stronger than the 5 great titans of the Origin Universe. These tyrannical forces could even destroy a sub-universe with a snap of their fingers. Of course, they wouldn't dare do that. By the way, Brother Qi, what do you think about the sudden opening of the mystic realm? Lin Feng probed. I have read many ancient books, but there is nothing in common with the previous 2 openings. Qi Yuzi pondered for a moment. Some say that it is because of the birth of a treasure. Some say that it is because of the manifestation of the Wheel Master. And some say that the Wheel Master is not dead at all. There are too many absurd theories. What do you think, Brother Qi? Some cultivators have triggered the conditions for the opening. Qi Yuzi said firmly, I'm a mind cultivator, so I can sense it more clearly than other cultivators. The opening of the wheel essence has an indescribable unique feeling, as if it is the consciousness left behind by the Wheel Master. If I am not wrong, there must be a treasure left behind by the Wheel Master in the mystic realm, waiting for the fated one. As long as that mind cultivator meets the conditions set by the Wheel Master, the mystic realm will open. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. There seemed to be someone looking at him from afar. It was Qi Yuzi. Maybe, Lin Feng said with a faint smile. He was testing Qi Yuzi, but Qi Yuzi was also testing him. The cooperation he mentioned before might be part of the reason, but this should be his real goal. Qi Yuzi seemed to think that he was the source of the opening of the mystic realm. The reason was simple. He was very special. However, Qi Yuzi was not sure, and neither was he. Everyone was exploring. To put it nicely, they were cooperating, but to put it bluntly, they were using each other. Lin Feng did not reject this. If there really is a mind cultivator who meets the conditions set by the Wheel Master, why doesn't the Wheel Master directly bestow the treasure? Lin Feng asked curiously. Qi Yuzi laughed loudly. Brother Lin, have you ever accepted a disciple? You can say that. Lin Feng laughed bitterly. As a teacher, he was very irresponsible. He was basically a hands-off shopkeeper, allowing his disciple to develop freely. Qi Yuzi said, if I am not wrong, the Wheel Master's actions are equivalent to passing down a treasure to his disciple. It is one thing for his disciple to meet the conditions, but to obtain his treasure, they still have to pass his test. Of course, if other mind cultivators can also accidentally pass the test, I believe that the Wheel Master is not a stingy person who hides by convention. Thus, during the first 2 times the mystic realm opened, some powerhouses also obtained treasures. However, I still believe that the Wheel Master's true treasure is still in the mystic realm. Even now, the Wheel Master has not been truly satisfied. Otherwise, the mystic realm would not open again. Lin Feng nodded. This conjecture was reasonable and well-founded. Back when it had become an origin source primal chaos venerate, the path left behind by Elder Yellow Springs had also been full of dangers and obstacles. How could it be so easy to obtain the Wheel Master's treasure now? That was a Xiantian Almighty, a transcendent being at the level of a universe ruler. Furthermore, he was probably quite strong, even among universe rulers. While he was thinking, more powerhouses have come, and there are a lot of them this time. Qi Yuzi's voice was suddenly heard. Lin Feng also sensed that there were 10 rather powerful peak Yuan venerate auras and one more aura. It seemed familiar. What? Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. M. Chapter 2809. Lin Feng had a rather deep impression of Taiyin Fu. After all, the first primal chaos ultimate treasure he had obtained here had come from Taiyin Fu. At the same time, he had also obtained many other treasures, including the first batch of great soul fruits. His aura was naturally familiar. It's his aura. Has he been resurrected? No. Given his strength, It's impossible for him to enter the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. Thump! Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. Tai Fu had most likely come for revenge, as there were 10 peak Yuan venerates with rather strong auras beside him. None of them were any weaker than the eternal god Shengjin. 10 of them. They were enough to surround and kill Luo Yinyang. What should he do? Run. Lin Feng had no other choice. He simply couldn't fight against 10 powerhouses that weren't any weaker than Sacred Gold. As for Qi Yuzi, who he had just met, it was even more impossible to rely on him. They had only formed a partnership based on mutual benefits. Furthermore, Lin Feng knew very well that Qi Yuzi wouldn't help him resist a strong enemy. Lin Feng didn't like relying on others or asking for help. This was the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. The core area was the dazzling radiance of the 100 million wheel tombs, which were illuminating the black fiendish eyes. One by one, they opened the true mystic realm of the 100 million wheel tomb. Outside were the endless black fiendish eyes. Whoosh! Lin Feng rushed out almost instantly. All his thoughts and judgments had been formed when he sensed Tai Fu's aura. There was only one path before Lin Feng. He had to leave before the other party could react. He would lose his life if he continued to lust after the treasures of the 100 million wheel tomb. As long as he left this sealed core area, his chances of survival outside would be much higher. Furthermore, there were countless black fiendish eyes outside the core area that could enter. Lin Feng hadn't been willing to take the risk at the time, but he had to do it now. What happened? Qi Yuzi's voice was heard immediately. He had immediately sensed Lin Feng's strange movements. At the moment, the peak Yuan venerates in the core area were also surprised. Lin Feng's sudden departure was undoubtedly rather strange. Because the brilliance of the 100 million wheels had reached its peak and was about to open, everyone was waiting for the treasure to be unearthed. Even if they wanted to leave, there was no reason for them to leave now. Hua! Hua! Strands of law energy suddenly appeared. Without waiting for Lin Feng to approach, the elite team, led by Muzin, had already taken action. There was no need for Tailoff to say anything. The moment they entered the core area, they had already detected Lin Feng's aura. Huang Zun's aura was too eye-catching. As soldiers in the army, carrying out missions was an instinct for them. It was impossible for them to fail to capture Huang Zun. That was the order of the Taichu general, and their mission would be accomplished. Keep them alive. Muzin's voice was calm and confident. The team members instantly took action. One after another, supreme chaos treasures were summoned, and streams of nomological energies were unleashed. They were the elites of the 13th Legion. If they allowed a little guy like Huang Zun to escape right under their noses, they would lose all face. It's him. Tailoff gnashed his teeth in hatred, which made Muzin and the other team members even more certain. The human Huang Zun, who was about to escape, was the target they were looking for. Not good. Lin Feng already knew that his escape route had been completely sealed. Forcefully attacking would only lead to his death. As he sped away, a ray of light appeared in his hand. It was the peak illusion-type chaos treasure, the 10 Desires Tribulation. Desire and tribulation were driven by perfect source heart force and erupted with a loud bang. Illusion-type attacks were indiscriminate. This was Lin Feng's true illusion technique. Even though Lin Feng's willpower was astonishing, he still couldn't take on 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the same time. After all, these 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses were really strong. In an instant, Lin Feng's technique was broken. His attainments in illusion techniques weren't very high to begin with, let alone dealing with 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the same time. It was like 1 against 10, so the impact on his willpower and source spirit was rather great. Failure was inevitable. Just Muzin alone was enough to make it difficult for Lin Feng to stop him. The reason he had used his illusion technique was to stop the momentum and buy some time. Swish! Lin Feng retreated and sped away in one breath. Although his illusion technique had been broken in an instant and consumed a lot of energy, it had at least given him some breathing room and hope of retreating. It's a dead end ahead. Musen sneered. He was familiar with the terrain of the 100 million wheel tomb. There was no way out ahead. This Huang Zun human had nowhere to run. All the team members turned into streaks of light and chased after Lin Feng. Musen brought Tailoff along and slowed down. He didn't need to do anything personally. He just needed to take care of the rear and prevent the Huang Zun human from taking drastic measures. His team members would naturally capture the Huang Zun human and bring him back. One escaped while the other 9 chased. Lin Feng didn't even look back as he quickly went deeper. This was a solution within a solution. Given the current situation, there was only one way left, and that was to take a gamble. 9 powerful auras comparable to Almighty's. Each one of them made one's heart tremble. 9 of them appearing at the same time to chase after the same cultivator was breathtaking. It's him again? They are the Taichu 13 Corps. How many enemies does this Huang Zun fellow have? All the peak Yuan venerates were speechless. First, he had been chased by the god of eternity of the Divine Inquisition. Now, he had attracted the elite warriors of the Taichu 13 Corps. How many outrageous things had this human Huang Zun done? In the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe, both the Taichu Inquisition and the military represented justice. I should have made a move just now. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo frowned slightly as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. Due to his status, he hadn't made a move earlier. Even though he knew that Lin Feng and Qi Yuzi were putting on an act, he hadn't exposed them. However, it now seemed that his decision had been wrong. Capturing and killing this human Huang Zun might be beneath his status and cause others to criticize him. However, he could gain the favor of the military and the Taichu Inquisition, so the advantages obviously outweighed the disadvantages. That was what he thought, but he didn't regret it. Now that the warriors of the 13 Corps were chasing, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo couldn't intervene. Wouldn't that make the 13 Corps lose face? Furthermore, the 10 elite warriors of the 13 Corps were quite strong. I hope they are just here to carry out a mission, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo thought to himself. If they also got involved and entered the secret realm, they would be very strong competitors. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of light sped forward. The front was bright and resplendent, and the perfect source energy was overflowing. Lin Feng didn't slow down at all, and the pursuing warriors of the 13 Corps were hot on his heels. Musen, who was at the back, couldn't help but frown. He vaguely had a bad premonition. Quick, catch him! Musashi's complexion instantly changed as he shouted loudly. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2810. Just as Musen's voice sounded, Lin Feng had already passed through the circle of light and completely disappeared into the light. The powerful, perfect source heart energy enveloped Lin Feng like a giant beast swallowing him whole. The 913 Corps elites behind him were all dumbfounded. Ta! 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 The soldiers all stopped outside the circle of light, not daring to enter. They came from the military, so their information resources weren't any worse than Qi Yuzi's. Even Qi Yuzi knew that this was a secret dimension, so how could they not know? No one who went in now would be able to come out. Although entering after the secret dimension opened would still have a 99% chance of survival, it was still better than entering before the secret dimension opened. If they entered now, they would definitely die. I should have thought of this. Musen gritted his teeth and blamed himself. This was his fault. Although the target was dead, the mission had failed because the Taichu general had given them the mission to bring back this Huang Zun human. How could they bring him back now? Captain, what should we do? Vice Captain Ming sure asked worriedly. The military had very strict rules. If they failed a mission, they would have to bear a lot of responsibility and be punished according to military rules. Especially since this wasn't a normal mission, but a mission issued by the Taichu general. The punishment would definitely be even more severe. Wait, Musen's expression was cold as he stared at the light. He naturally wouldn't go in to die. No matter how severe the punishment was, it wouldn't be enough to kill them. At most, they would be demoted, locked up, or sent on extremely dangerous missions. Wait, everyone was stunned and looked at each other. What kind of solution was this? Musen glanced at everyone. The 100 million Luan tomb secret dimension is about to open. When we enter and get the target's body, at least part of the mission will be completed. If the general asks, we can say that the target couldn't be captured and fought to the death. Everyone nodded. They knew that once they entered the 100 million Luan tomb secret dimension, some of their comrades would die. Although they were very strong, the secret dimension was extremely dangerous. It was normal for a few of them to die. The captain's words were flawless, and they would complete the mission. After all, according to the captain's confession, it wasn't their fault that the mission wasn't perfectly completed. There must be treasures in the 100 million wheel tomb. If we can obtain one or two, we can make up for our mistakes. If any of us were to encounter a fortuitous encounter in the secret realm, it would be even more of a miracle. What do you think? Muzin's gaze swept across the team members and finally landed on Taloff. The only variable was Taylor. Listen to the captain. We have no problem with that. This is the best solution. The other team members discussed among themselves, and all of them agreed. The expression on Taichu's face betrayed his inner thoughts. His eyes glowed, and he was unable to contain his joy. He was the happiest person to see Lin Feng fall. He had always been suspicious of the Taichu general's orders. If he wanted to kill Lin Feng, then so be it. Why bring him back? He asked his father about this, but his father did not answer him. Now everything was fine. The death of that damned Huang Zun human was exactly what he wanted. He could finally get his revenge. I agree as well. Seeing Captain Muzin and the other team members' gazes land on him, Taylor nodded. If these vicious warriors decided to kill him as well, then it would be over. His father could only ask the Taichu general to revive him once, and that was already the limit. His father could not afford to revive him again. Even if he could, his father might not be willing. However, Taylor also knew that the possibility of this happening was very small. After all, if Muzin did this, it would be the same as betraying the army. Furthermore, Taylor was also looking forward to being able to enter the 100 million wheel tomb. His talent was not too high, and it was all thanks to his father's accumulation of resources. If he could encounter a fortuitous encounter in the secret realm, he would be able to fulfill his wish. With the protection of the 13th Division's elites, there was no need to worry about their safety. Lin Feng's entry into the 100 million wheel tomb did not cause much of a stir. After all, he was not the first and would not be the last. Every time the 100 million wheel tomb retreated, there would always be some corpses at the entrance of the secret realm. What a pity. Although Qi Yuzi felt that it was a pity, he did not think too much about it. He and Lin Feng were only acquaintances. Back then, he had helped Lin Feng for his own personal benefit. Unfortunately, he had put on a show for nothing and lost a partner to work with. After entering the secret realm, he could only fight alone. This kid has too many enemies. The one before was the god of eternity from the godly inquisition of the child universe. After that, it was a warrior from the 13 Corps. His talent is high, but unfortunately, he doesn't know how to be a good person. Qi Yuzi shook his head. In his opinion, Lin Feng's EQ must be too low, and he did not know how to be a good person. That was why he had so many enemies. He was young and did not know how to avoid people and not provoke people that he should not provoke. But then again, geniuses were often arrogant. Could it be that my previous judgment was wrong? Qi Yuzi looked at the 100 million wheels and pondered deeply. In his opinion, Lin Feng was very likely to be the cultivator who had met the conditions to open the secret realm. After all, the other cultivators were not that special. Only Lin Feng was Huang Zun. There were too few Huang Zun who could enter the core area of the 100 million wheels. Huang Zun, who had the strength of an almighty and the will of a top-tier almighty, and who was also a mind cultivator, was even more unheard of. That was why Qi Yuzi came to such a conclusion. Soon, there will be an answer. If he really is the source of the secret realm, he won't die so easily. When the 100 million wheels dissipate, his corpse will definitely not be at the entrance of the secret realm. Whoosh! The 100 million wheels shone brightly like a scorching sun. Qi Yuzi's gaze focused. He clearly knew that the 100 million wheels had reached their peak. The black eyes of evil outside opened one by one. When all of them opened, the 100 million wheels would dissipate, and the secret realm would open. At the moment, many cultivators had already started to squeeze towards the outer circle of the 100 million wheels impatiently. They weren't fighting for the unearthed treasure or being the first to enter the secret realm. Instead, they were fighting for the first treasure, the human-shaped treasure, Lin Feng's corpse. Even though he had been killed by the 100 million wheels, his corpse wouldn't be destroyed. There were at least 5 supreme chaos treasures on Lin Feng's body. Those were supreme chaos treasures. More than half of the peak Yuan venerates here didn't have any supreme chaos treasures on them. Obtaining one would already be a huge gain. Obtaining 5 would be a huge gain. They didn't have the ability or qualifications to fight for the unearthed treasure, but they could fight for a corpse. Furthermore, the other big shots wouldn't fight for it with them. It's mine. I must get it. Crack. All the peak Yuan venerates were envious. The greed that had just been suppressed surfaced once again. They were waiting for the moment the 100 million wheels dissipated so that they could seize the opportunity. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 2811. One abundant, perfect source heart force. Lin Feng's pores were absorbing the perfect source heart force, which was more than 10 times denser than the perfect source heart force in the GoldenEye realm. It was too bright. It was as if he had entered a world where he couldn't see anything. However, cultivators didn't use their eyes to see, but their heart to sense. However, the perfect source heart force here was so dense that they couldn't even sense the aura. How did the cultivators who entered before me die? Lin Feng had heard from Qi Yuzi that all the cultivators who had entered before him had died, but he didn't know how they had died. I understand. After staying for a short while, Lin Feng found out how these cultivators had died. They had died from overeating. Even if one did not absorb the all-pervasive perfect origin heart force, it would still enter one's body in wisps. It was just like how ordinary people needed to breathe in the air. Even if the cultivators here blocked it, the perfect origin heart force would still invade their bodies. What was the root of a Yuan venerate powerhouse? Their physical body? Their soul? No, it was their internal universe. The core was in their internal universe. Once they absorbed too much perfect source heart force, their internal universe would explode and they would die. The perfect origin core force in this place was offensive. Furthermore, its energy was extremely strong. Even a trace of it was very terrifying. This is the core of the 100 million wheel master's internal universe. Therefore, the perfect source heart force is actually the energy of his internal universe. How strong was the perfect source heart force of a universe ruler? It was hard to imagine. Even if it was less than 1,000th or 1/10,000th of the energy intensity, it would still far exceed that of an almighty. It was too difficult for a Yuan venerate powerhouse to bear it. Mind cultivators could refine a little, while other Yuan venerates could only resist. However, regardless of whether they were mind cultivators or not, their internal universe had a limit. Just nice. Lin Feng was happy to endure it. His internal universe had always lacked the heart force sky path. Although he had opened and absorbed it in the Silver Eye realm and the Golden Eye realm, it was still far from the other 5 great paths. His internal universe was in an imperfect state. A large amount of perfect source heart force was pouring in and turning into resources for his internal universe. He didn't need to be too deliberate. His internal universe would naturally integrate it into it. Not enough. I can take the initiative to absorb a little. Lin Feng had an accurate grasp of the speed. It would be troublesome to absorb too much. However, the current situation was just right. His internal universe seemed to be undergoing a metamorphosis, constantly moving towards perfection. As his internal universe's core, strength, heavenly Tao improved, his perfect source heart force also continued to increase. One of the main reasons why they died after entering the radiance of 100 million wheels was because they couldn't find the way. Some mental cultivators should be able to endure here for quite some time. However, perseverance was just perseverance. It wasn't as if they were fish in water. After a long time, they would explode from this offensive perfect source heart force. The eyes of dark malice outside were opening one by one, and the secret realm was slowly opening. It's possible that the real secret realm hasn't opened yet, but the outer area of the secret realm should have been in the opening phase. Lin Feng made his judgment. Because the dark eyes of killing intent had always been partially open, he could enter it. Most importantly, he could feel the call. It was a very strong calling. Chi Yuzi's guess is correct. It's very likely that I'm the source of the secret realm. The continuous appearance of the Silver Eye realm and the Golden Eye realm, as well as the strange phenomenon that had occurred when he had entered the radiance of 100 Million Wheels tomb, further proved this. After entering the radiance of 100 Million Wheels and feeling the strong calling, Lin Feng was even more certain. Previously, he had been chased to a dead end and had no choice but to enter the radiance of 100 Million Wheels. They definitely won't chase after me now. Lin Feng was very certain. Who would disregard their lives and barge in despite knowing that it was a dead end? He had no choice, but the Yuan venerates chasing after him had a choice. They could enter after the secret realm opened. Even if they entered, they wouldn't be able to sense any aura here, and they wouldn't be able to find him either. This direction, Lin Feng followed the calling. Even though there was a bright white light, and it didn't seem to make any difference where he went, the calling was still very clear. The place where the calling was definitely the correct path. It was very scary to move forward in an area that didn't change at all. If one couldn't sense any aura, they would think that they were going in circles on the same spot and that they were trapped in a maze or illusion. This was a very strong test of one's willpower. Furthermore, there were tests of willpower everywhere in the secret realm. The path? No, it's an illusion. Lin Feng didn't even think about it. He didn't even need to use his willpower to withstand it. The path that suddenly appeared was definitely fake. Even if it wasn't fake, it definitely wasn't the correct path, as the calling was the clearest. Desperate situation? A terrifying vortex suddenly appeared in front of him. This was the restriction of the 100 Million Wheels tomb. Its terrifying aura could even kill an almighty. Lin Feng's eyes glowed, and his willpower was as firm as steel. Break! This was the willpower of a top almighty. Just as Chi Yuzi had said, having the willpower of a top almighty was the basis for entering the secret realm. The restriction ahead turned into a ray of light and disappeared. Lin Feng continued forward. To Lin Feng, this was an illusion. However, if other cultivators couldn't break through this environment, it was a real restriction. In the secret realm, some were illusions, while some were real. The illusions of the Black Fiendish eye were the same. Lin Feng had learned a lot of secrets from Chi Yuzi, and he had experienced it himself. Thus, he wasn't surprised. This is Eye of Samsara. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He didn't know how long he had traveled, but he had seen a few peak Yuan venerate corpses along the way. Lin Feng didn't stand on ceremony and took the treasures. However, after passing through the illusion restriction, the surrounding environment seemed to change. It was no longer a blinding white light. Instead, other things started to appear. 1, 2, 3, 11? Lin Feng took a deep breath. These were eyes of Samsara. They were difficult to find even in the 100 Million Wheels tomb. He had been in the 100 Million Wheels tomb for a long time and had only found 2 eyes of Samsara, each of which contained vigorous, perfect source heart force. However, he had found 11 eyes of Samsara not long after entering the secret realm. He had accomplished his mission well. The essence of the eyes of Samsara is perfect source heart force. The perfect source heart force here is so vigorous. It's normal for eyes of Samsara to appear. There must be more than 11. Sure enough, Lin Feng found a few more eyes of Samsara after speeding forward for a while. On the right path, eyes of Samsara were as common as wild fruits by the roadside. Before long, Lin Feng had more than 100 eyes of Samsara in his pocket. I've struck gold. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. These were eyes of Samsara. Each one was worth 1 Hongmeng source crystal. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. M. Chapter 2812. 1 Hongmeng source crystal was equivalent to 100 military credits. Lin Feng had picked up more than 100 eyes of Samsara along the way, which was equivalent to gaining 10,000 military credits for free. Naturally, he had earned a lot. Furthermore, this was only the periphery of the mystic realm. He had yet to truly enter the mystic realm. In addition, there were many treasures in the storage rings of the few peak Yuan venerates who had greedily barged into the 100 million wheel splendor. Lin Feng felt like he was opening up a wasteland this time. Being the first to eat crabs would naturally earn him a lot. The radiance of the 100 million wheel splendor is gradually fading. Lin Feng didn't think that it was the 100 million wheel splendor that was fading. It was too much of a coincidence that he had just entered the 100 million wheel splendor. It was more likely that he had left the area covered by the 100 million wheel splendor and entered the true mystic realm, calling out and guiding him forward. Actually, Lin Feng might have been able to obtain more eyes of samsara if he had taken a detour. However, these were external objects. Lin Feng didn't need them. Once he had the strength, everything else would naturally be available. I finally left the 100 million wheel splendor. Lin Feng's vision was restored, and everything in front of him suddenly became clear. The void was filled with dark eyes of killing intent, flashing with a strange light. Lin Feng only glanced at them and did not look at them directly, because once he looked at them directly, he could easily trigger the illusion of the dark eyes of killing intent. Although Lin Feng wasn't afraid of fighting, there was no need for that now. So many continents. The continents were like platforms suspended in the void. One could see between continents, but there was an invisible barrier that couldn't be crossed. It seemed like the only way to enter was through the black eyes. The undulating continents were very illusory. There were at least a few dozen continents as far as the eye could see. Calling out wouldn't be of much use at the moment. After all, even if one knew the direction, they wouldn't be able to move forward. Although the location could be fixed through the black eyes, the direction wasn't. Which one should I enter? In front of Lin Feng, there were tens of thousands of black eyes suspended in the void. Every one of them was open and flickered with a strange light, waiting for a cultivator to look at them. Ha! Lin Feng tried to enter the floating continent directly, but was blocked by an invisible energy. Whoosh! 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 Changing directions, Lin Feng switched to the other floating continents. Layers of faint light films were as thick as paper, but they were filled with tyrannical and perfect source heart force. Lin Feng had tried all sorts of methods, but they were all useless. This is the same as the perfect origin heart force of the 100 million wheel splendor. Only an almighty with tyrannical strength would have the ability to shatter it. An impenetrable barrier. Lin Feng frowned and returned to his original position. In the next moment, he looked directly at one of the eyes of dark malice. His gaze converged, and the eyes of dark malice shone brightly. In an instant, a black shadow appeared in front of him. A spear was imbued with demonic energy and pierced through space. Coiling silk stack shadows. Fusing with the city of Will's smash, the phantom spider hand turned into countless coiling threads that wrapped around the spear-wielding black shadow. Lin Feng didn't use the Origin Sea impact because he didn't know if it would work on illusions. Moreover, controlling objects to attack was more direct. The current power of the phantom spider hand was comparable to a peak Yuan venerate, so Lin Feng was confident that he could defeat his opponent. After an intense battle, the city of Will once again smashed the opponent unconscious. The coiling threads of the phantom spider hand were like steel wires that directly strangled the black shadow. In an instant, the eyes of dark malice in front of him dimmed. Hua! Lin Feng passed without a hitch. Whoosh! Lin Feng entered. It was like a winding path. It wasn't a teleportation path like he had imagined, but a path of the eyes of dark malice. However, the path wasn't long, and he soon reached the end. Light flashed. Lin Feng was about to pass through the eyes of dark malice when an invisible energy blocked him. Another barrier. I can't go in. Lin Feng was speechless. It was as if he had punched the air. This barrier was exactly the same as the one on the floating continent outside. To be precise, it was a barrier on the floating continent. Lin Feng stood in front of the barrier. He clearly knew that he was now in the eyes of dark malice. He could see everything on the floating continent outside through the thin layer of the barrier. It was a blue desert with tornadoes wreaking havoc in the desert. A lot of sand condensed into strange life forms that roared and slammed against the ground. Many of them even blasted towards the tornadoes. They were extremely strong and had no soul. It definitely wasn't easy to kill these sand life forms. After observing for a while, Lin Feng immediately retreated. Since he couldn't go in, there was no need to waste time. He tried again with another Eyes of Dark Malice. The second, the third, the fourth, every Eyes of Dark Malice corresponded to a floating continent. Lin Feng tried 5 Eyes of Dark Malice, but the result was the same for every Eyes of Dark Malice. There was a barrier as thin as a cicada's wing that kept him out of the Eyes of Dark Malice. Phew! Lin Feng let out a light sigh. After testing it 5 times, he had a rough understanding of it. The tens of thousands of Eyes of Dark Malice before him were indeed entrances that led to the various levels of the secret realm. At present, it seemed that these countless floating continents were the secret realm created by the 100 million wheel master and were connected by the Eyes of Dark Malice. The way to enter had to be like what he had just tested. However, the secret realm hadn't opened yet. Seems like I came a little early. Besides obtaining some Yuan Venerate treasures and 100 Eyes of Samsara, there didn't seem to be any other special benefits. Lin Feng turned his head and looked at the area covered by the 100 million will brilliance in the distance, wondering if he should go back and get some more Eyes of Samsara. In any case, he wouldn't get lost. Entering the range of the 100 million will brilliance would not only allow him to absorb perfect source heart force, but also earn some Hongmeng source crystals. The more treasures, the better. When the 100 million wheel brilliance dissipates and all the Eyes of Dark Malice open, the secret realm will open. At that time, I will be the first to enter. Lin Feng's mind was as clear as a mirror. He knew the current situation like the back of his hand. However, even if he was the first to enter, he wouldn't have much of an advantage. Tens of thousands of Eyes of Dark Malice corresponded to tens of thousands of floating continents. Each floating continent was connected to other floating continents through the Eyes of Dark Malice, so it wouldn't be possible to explore them in a short time. Although he had entered first, once the secret realm opened, the other cultivators would rush in and he wouldn't have much of an advantage. What I should do now isn't to earn more Hongmeng source crystals, but to expand my advantage. Lin Feng knew exactly what he had to do. Compared to the treasures in the secret realm, the treasures in the 100 million will brilliance weren't worth mentioning. He had to set his sights further. Cultivating during this time would be more useful than searching for treasures. Furthermore, the 10-peak Yuan Venerates who had been chasing him would also enter when the time came, including the great Ian God of Universe 7's Divine Tribunal. The secret realm itself was dangerous, and his strength wasn't enough to protect himself. I'll make the best use of this period of safety. Once the secret realm opens, even if I can't be invincible, I'll at least be able to win and have a way out. Lin Feng already had a plan in mind. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website. Chapter 28:13. Lin Feng naturally didn't plan on cultivating like normal. This was the secret realm at the core of the tomb of 100 million wheels. It was the blood, sweat, and tears of the Lord of 100 million wheels. It was most suitable for cultivating the heavenly Tao of heart force. Moreover, Lin Feng himself was refining a soul-type ultimate chaos treasure. I can use battle to improve my heart force, my understanding of the heavenly Tao, and my willpower. Lin Feng learned from Qi Yuzi that the key to the secret realm was heart force and willpower. If he wanted to be like a fish in water in the secret realm, he couldn't lack these two. Moreover, his current environment was most suitable for improving his heart force and willpower. Through the Eyes of Black Malice, not only can I train my willpower, but I can also familiarize myself with the terrain. The last time the secret realm opened was countless epochs ago. There were no records of it in the ancient books, let alone a map. Moreover, very few people had ever left the secret realm alive. Once the arcane realm was opened, the dangers of the arcane realm itself, as well as the battles between other cultivators, would be completely exposed. Lin Feng quickly entered the 6th Eye of Black Malice. The Black Malice was both real and illusory. Its strength changed according to the cultivator's willpower. If the cultivator's willpower was strong, the Black Malice would be weak. If the cultivator's willpower was weak, the Black Malice would be strong. Although Lin Feng's strength was average, especially when his Origin Sea attacks were useless against the Black Malice, his willpower was so strong that the Black Malice couldn't unleash its full strength. Web of Shadows. Every time he used it in battle, he would improve his mastery of the Phantom Spider Hand. Increasing his strength in battle was what Lin Feng was most proficient at and used most often. After killing the Black Malice, he would enter the Eye of Black Malice, which led to one of the floating continents. There were all kinds of floating continents of strange shapes and sizes. There were blue deserts, yellow clouds, inverted mountains, and densely packed grids. These floating continents didn't seem to be naturally formed, but they were created. The world of heart force, the world of willpower. These floating continents were all created by the Lord of 100,000,000 Wheels. Lin Feng could see the tip of the iceberg of each floating continent through the membrane. While he was admiring the beautiful scenery, a beam of light in the distance attracted his attention. Lin Feng focused his gaze. Although the light was very small and weak, that was because it was far away. If it was close enough, it would most likely be one of them. Treasure. Although he didn't know what kind of treasure it was, Lin Feng was certain. This was because this dot of light was very abrupt in this floating continent. It was very likely that it was a treasure. Oh, Lin Feng fell in a deep thought. He took a deep look at the location of the light spot and then retreated from the black eyes of killing intent. If there was one, there would be two. If there were two, there would be three. Ever since the first time he saw the light spot, every time he entered the Eye of dark killing intent to observe the floating land, Lin Feng became even more attentive. He did not let go of any clues, and, as expected, he found many clues. The light spots of distant treasures were the most common. There were also more subtle clues. Of course, there were also very obvious ones, such as this floating continent that looked like a whirlpool world. Hongming Origin Crystals. Lin Feng opened his eyes wide and looked at the floating continent through the barrier. On the continent, there were large and small whirlpools. In the center of each whirlpool were some fragments. At a glance, it was not surprising, but upon closer inspection, they were actually Hongming Origin Crystals. As far as the eye could see, there were more than 100 Hongming Origin Crystals. It was difficult to estimate how many Hongming Origin Crystals there were on the floating continent. 109. Lin Feng retreated from the Eye of dark killing intent and memorized it deeply. He had been in the secret realm for a while now. Out of the tens of thousands of eyes of killing intent, 109 of them were less than 1%. But he had already found 4 special ones. In Lin Feng's opinion, there were definitely more treasures in the Eye of killing intent than these 4 floating continents. However, he was certain that there were treasures on these 4 floating continents, and he knew the location of these treasures. Following the sequence, Lin Feng continued to enter the next Eye of Dark Malice. Although he was unable to truly enter the floating continent due to the barrier, once the secret world opened, Lin Feng would be able to enter each Eye of Dark Malice that contained treasures through his memories. Time. Compared to other peak Yuan venerates, Lin Feng had a lot more time, even if he was on the same starting line. Furthermore, other peak Yuan venerates had to defeat the Black Fiends before they could enter the Eye of Killing Intent. After entering the floating continent, they would search for treasures. However, they wouldn't know the location of the treasures. How many Yuan venerates would enter the Eye of Killing Intent that contained tens of thousands of Eyes of Killing Intent? Many floating continents would be empty for a period of time, and no Yuan venerates would enter. There are about 3,000 Yuan venerates outside. However, as time passes, the number of Yuan venerates will increase. Lin Feng knew this very well. News of the treasure being unearthed had already spread. However, it would take a considerable amount of time to enter the 100,000,000 wheel tomb from the 100,000,000 wheel origin realm and reach the core area. Furthermore, one had to be strong enough to pass through the golden Eye Samsara. Thus, the number of yuan venerates wouldn't increase too much. Hurry up. The more eye of killing intent I enter, the more I will gain. If I am familiar with the route, I will have a better chance of exploring the secret realm. In the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. Daoistan. It's actually Daoistan. He came really quickly. This is getting interesting. The competition is getting more and more intense. Another top powerhouse had arrived. Daoistan, who came from the Daoyin Palace, held a horsetail whisk in his hand and smiled. He seemed harmless, but he made Great King Green Hammer and Heavenly King Zhao Kuei feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy, just like Musin and the elites of the 13th Legion. The Daoyin Palace was a super force in the Taichu origin realm that wasn't inferior to the army. Daoist An's reputation was comparable to Zhu Ying's. Haha, I've waited so long for the secret realm to open. How could I miss such a grand occasion? Daoistan smiled as he stroked his mustache. A bright light flashed through his small eyes. He was a top-notch mind cultivator. He had been yearning for the 100 million Luan Tomb secret realm for a long time. After Daoist An's arrival, some other top powerhouses arrived one after another. Although none of them could compare to Daoist, and the number of Yuan Venerate powerhouses in the second echelon was increasing. Furthermore, the vast majority of them were mind cultivators. The top mind cultivators of the Taichu origin realm paid a lot of attention to the 100 million Luan Tomb secret realm, as it was a sacred ground for mind cultivators. Why hasn't the 100 million Luan radiance dissipated yet? Yeah, more and more powerhouses are arriving. If we wait any longer, we won't have a place to stand. Soon. Look, the 100 million Luan radiance is already showing signs of dissipating. That's right. More than 99% of the eye of killing intent outside have already opened. Don't worry, everyone. The secret realm is about to open. All the Yuan Venerate powerhouses were anxious and expectant. They were afraid of falling behind, but they were also afraid that there would be too many competitors. Seeing the 100 million Lin radiance, but not being able to enter made them feel like they were suffering.